right, we're gonna do this pop-up video. There's so much conversation going on right now. I got to get a couple more invites out, so bear with me for a second. So many people are talking about realignment and the new Big 12 and all those teams. I saw a ton going on chat and whatnot, and I just said to myself, why not talk about it? You know, I'm not into this for any particular reason except for just give people a place to chat and talk. So that's what we're doing right now. I will open with one thing I saw on Twitter, and let me go to Jim Williams' tweet. Give me 1 second. Jim Williams' tweet, actually were a couple of them that I wanted to share with everybody. There they at. So I think this is the lead one, and I'm going to grab the note and will put it right here, and then I will bring it up. You got to love these live conversations, right? I mean, it's just amazing how much information goes out so quickly. Hey guys, all right. So if you want to participate, leave me a comment, or I'm going to post the link and you can join the show if you're really passionate about something that's going on today. Let me post the link. I was going to review this Jim Williams tweet, but let me get the link out if you guys want to join the show, because that's actually what I'm more into. Just everybody has a conversation, and I'm like, why are we not actually doing a show and talking about it? So that's what I'm going to do right now. Hey, Monkey, how you doing, man? Good to see you. All right. Let's see here. So I just posted the link. If you want to join the show, just click on the link on your phone or on your computer, and you can join the show and we can talk. But I'm going to start with right here, this latest Jim Williams tweet, which I think is a big deal. Let me make it bigger. It says, what I know about the Pac-12 media deal, working on getting more details, but 2 linear partners and a streamer. So that would be a CBS and NBC. It's not going to be, but you're also talking ION, the CW, and, there's other outlets. Yeah, Fox and ESPN can do some sub stuff, but who really thinks you're going to do that after all this time? So this tweet right here from Jim is a huge thing, because it shows that nobody's sitting idle. Just because just because San Diego State got slapped around, which was garbage, by the way. If you're a San Diego State fan, you have to pop in here because I want to talk to you. Because you and SMU were used like, I won't even get into what you were used by. And I'm really offended by it because they did the same thing to BYU twice over the last 13 years. Actually, it wouldn't have been that long. That would be 9 or 10. So, if this is something that you're passionate about, I want you to join the show. I put in the link right there. Leave me a comment and we'll start the conversation, because I can't do this all by myself. Let me finish reading this tweet. Regional national coverage, weeknight games on the table. I have no idea who is involved. Developing story, more to come. Have a great holiday. As Jim always does, he cares about other people. He's not caring about himself. So, and happy 4th of July holiday, by the way. I need to know who's actually following. All I can see is the 9, and I don't know who's actually following, guys. There we go. Hey, Greg, how you doing? So, do you have a comment or a question I can cover? I posted the link if you want to join the show, but we can do this on comments and suggestions if you guys would like to. Let me jump back to where Jim was at. Now, he's had several tweets that have been jumping around, right? And Jim is the guy that I would tell everybody to pay attention to. I do talk to him, but it's one of those things where it's not so much about what the story is. It's who's saying it and what they're saying. And I just want to tell everybody right now, Jim Williams, when he talks, everybody should be listening. So don't want this basketball tweet. What I do want is, let's see here. So this comment right here about the framework, let me be clear. This is the framework of the deal. Plenty of details need to be worked out, but the Pac-12 hopes to get it done before Football Media Day. Okay, whoever's in the channel right now, and Mullen, how you doing? Oh. How about this?
I apologize. It was on top of my head. Is that better, Moen? Please tell me it's better. I apologize. My mic was up above my head. And Greg, again, good to see you. Let's see. I see lots of arguing with UConn. I kind of agree with UConn not getting an invite. Um, I personally think UConn would be a good invite. I think that they could step up. Hey, Earl, I think they could step up, and they definitely, if they get the money, I think they can be, just as good as a Cincinnati, just as good as a Houston. I don't know. UCF's got something going down there that I think is a pretty big deal. Um, but at the end of the day, it all comes to money, right? We got Cougar Tracks, Greg Medina. Let me just call out everybody's name: Earl Carr, Moen Vision, uh, Greg Medina again. Mr. Monkey was first in the house, just so everybody knows. So, um, at Greg arguing with UConn or about UConn. That's a great question, Greg. Do you want UConn to be in, or do you not want them to be in? It kind of looked like you didn't, but I could be mistaking that too. Earl Carr, it's me, BYU Outlaw, aka Cougar Sports Fan. Nice to meet you, Earl. I'm going to post the link again. If you guys want to join me on the show, I'd love to have a conversation. I'm not just here to bloviate and to talk you guys' ears off. I really want to share what you guys are thinking with what I'm kind of thinking and see if we can get a conversation. So somebody take that link and join me. Let me just scroll down here. There was a few other tweets from Jim. Let me see if I can find them on his general release. I don't know. He did so many, they were subtweets. I might not be able to find them. All right. Well, I'll put that away and I won't worry about that. So there, that's better. So Earl says, yes, bring UConn and also bring in Gonzaga. That's another great conversation. Who wants the basketball build of the Big 12? I'm kind of scared of it, to be honest with you. This is football drives ratings. I love basketball, and obviously the Big 12 is good at basketball, great at basketball. But it's a real concern if nobody else is doing it. Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Let me get us both on here so we can see you. So you don't have to turn on your camera if you don't want to. So tell me what you're thinking tonight.
Well, my big thing is, what I've been reading, looking at the different tweets. UConn, I recall them, when they were playing, because I'm a Houston alum.
Okay.
So, and now my son attends Tech, so I'm kind of my money goes to Tech right now, so I
Right.
have to be a
Right.
fan of them. But seeing UConn many years with University of Houston and playing them, what I see from them is they be they just stayed just what they were. I mean,
Right.
just a lonely team, and they really didn't get better. And a couple of years back, I was looking at a couple of things where they were thinking about getting rid of the program because either financial or whatever it was, and they
Right.
wanted to stick with basketball only and the basketball programs and the other, non-revenue sports.
Okay.
So I just think that trying to split up the money wise, I don't think it's a good idea because yes, to me, even though I can't stand Memphis, Memphis would be
Right.
almost a better fit than UConn because I was reading today on some of those little things back and forth, and I was going through my own little checking up on it also, where they even talked about FedEx even sponsoring the Big 12 championships, all of them,
Right.
and opening
Right.
their wallet up. And I just think, like I said, I can't stand Memphis, but even them, to me, in my opinion, would be a better fit in the Big 12 than a UConn. So I don't know. It just, like I said, it's just a lot of different things. What I'm reading,
Right.
what I'm looking at, like your show, and I look at some of the other shows. It's just, I just think that's my opinion that UConn, you know what, it's not a basketball conference; it's a football conference, and all the money is about football.
Right.
So and then I was reading different things going on today, and I was like, damn, man, those guys are getting into it. But
Right.
I was just looking at it. I was looking at both sides of what was going on, and I just saw it just didn't look right. I mean, it just one of the guys had a point. It's all about football. What do
Right.
you look like? And I understand the population of New York and everything else, and that I can see. They want more of the audience, But
Right.
then I was reading also, about Rutgers, and then I was looking at the Ohio State, the boards with them and different things, and they're going like, damn, how do we figure out a way to get rid of Rutgers, because they're getting all this money, and they're a cellar dweller every year.
Right.
And so you know what, you hate to be putting that same kind of check into UConn's hands without I was reading, like I said, I was reading a lot of things going on with those two guys, and then some other guys. I was reading those, how what let me see, what did one of them say? A sugar daddy. The Big 12 is going to be their sugar daddy. And so, you
Right.
know what? To me, I was like, oh, well, they have a point. You know what? Why give them money if they haven't improved the program? Maybe in a couple of years, in about 2 or 3 years, if they see improvement in them. But, besides that, I just don't see it right now to use that kind of money on a UConn.
So look, those are all great points, and I think the thinning of the pie was what everybody is worried about, right? But there's a couple things that would really drive UConn, and the regionality is actually what we want. And Mr. Monkey's reading my mind right here. He says advantages of UConn men's basketball, number one women's basketball, and then the New York and obviously Northeast markets, and that's all well and good. I actually am looking at it a little different. Um, I think they would be just a good member of the conference. I think what we're seeing right now is when you have selfish teams and selfish schools that are in these conferences, like the Pac-12, there's no continuity, right? They have nobody supporting each other. I
Correct.
think if UConn came in, even though there are some UConn fans that don't want anything to do with it because they like being able to drive to all their games in the Big East. Um, but if we're talking big picture, if you give them, let's just say you give them half a share when they come in, but the TV actually says they're going to pay P5 money, then there would be no reason not to, right? Because then
Correct.
every team would get the surplus, and then they would, whatever it was, would have to earn it back, like BYU and Houston and whatnot. So if you could take it regardless of cost, and it's just a location and a school, is there anything that you're really against on UConn, or is it just because you don't want to split up the money?
I think splitting up the money is the biggest thing, because, like you said, if the media said, you know what, we're going to pay everybody a full share, because doesn't the current contract
Right, the
run
pro
out 2 years?
rata, right?
It doesn't run 2 years, and then does the new one? Does I read different things on the new one. Does it range anywhere between 48 and 53 million dollars per team when the new deal comes out?
Well, see that there's some of that we don't know the exact number. The number that is quoted that is 31.7 is guaranteed,
Yeah,
right? But then on top of that, you get all the tournament credits. You get
the bonus.
Yormark just signed that contract, so now they're selling the data of the entire conference out, and they're getting money for that. They're going to get money for and sponsors from the Rucker thing, Mexico. So all those things add up. And there's an argument that if you literally have the number one conference, it's in basketball, number one, and then way down here's number two, and you can justify that. Looking down the road, Yormark is thinking that's when you can split those things off and you can sell them differently.
Do you think it's true what they were talking about, where the basketball and the football are going away from the NCAA and starting their own
Right.
programs where they can get rid of the Title IX?
So okay, so let's talk about that. There are a couple big concerns, and I did quite a bit of research on this even before I started my channel, because I wanted to understand why there would be a problem with the conferences sort of separating the two big sports and everything else. And the biggest challenge, the biggest things you're going to run into is if they move and say the top 60 teams left and they were only playing in now their own football league, it's quite possible they could lose their tax exempt status.
Okay.
So with the government, if you're with the university, you can say, "Oh yeah, that's tax free, right? We won't tax you on that income." Like the NFL has got a tax exemption somehow. Um, but so there's that part, right? The tax exempt part, I think, is a big deal. It's a lot of money. And then the other thing is, if you peeled off, let's say it's only 40 teams that peel off and do their own thing, then the rest of the guys are going to be left out. And can you imagine a class action suit, somebody claiming monopoly and saying you can't do that?
Correct.
You can't pull those off. And the only way that would happen is it would take a lot of legal stuff. It would take literally, they would start planning now, and they would try to pull it off in maybe 10 years.
Yeah, I think if the media deals did come out where to say, like, you know what, we're going to pay everybody a full share. You know what, that would be no problem at all. To say, you know what, come on Utah. I mean, come on UConn. This
Right.
It's coming in the league. But you know what, I just think that the money situation, and because I've been kind of watching everyone, with UCF, Cincinnati, Houston,
Right.
and the other schools that are coming in now. And you know what? They've been, to the New York Six. I mean, the New Year's Sixes bowls, and
Right.
then UCF. They've been kind of a juggernaut for the last 4 or 5 years,
Right.
like that, and
Yeah.
they really earned it. Then Cincinnati with the playoffs.
Right.
You know what? They've struggled, and they built themselves to where they are now. And
Right.
I think there's where I want to see UConn get to that point where, building themselves up, and then say, you know what, you do belong with us.
I think that's fair analysis. And you could look at it from 90,000 feet and look in and say, okay, yeah, you're going to be like our number one target, but we're going to set these benchmarks that you have to go out and sort of reach
Correct.
before we can really bring you in. And it's because of money and exposure and all those things. Well, at the very beginning, when UConn first came up, and this is in April, I posed a question to the UConn fans, why do you think you belong in the Big 12? And I asked them, do you have a modern athletic center? Do you have a brand new track? I mean, I asked them all these questions.
Mhm.
And darned if they had everything that was brand new
It
except
is.
a
Looks
football
good.
stadium,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So their football stadium's like 30 miles off campus, and that's really kind of a requirement to play big boys football.
Correct.
So I'm not against your idea. I think that would be completely fine. I don't know how long UConn's just going to sit there. They might decide to do something different, and so you could say it might be a missed opportunity. But if we go by Cougar Tracks right here, which says don't bring in teams just to add teams. If they bring in added value, then bring them in. I believe SDSU would be better than UConn, and you could absolutely make that argument. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, because that's coming up in the next couple of years. That stadium that BYU has is beautiful.
Right.
I'm-
It needs improvements, but it is a really cool stadium. Yeah.
You know what? Either for Texas Tech or Houston, I will be up there to one of those games up there to go watch them.
Then send me a DM and we'll get together, man. Anybody who's traveling up here and wants to get together, I absolutely am wanting to do that. So I would look forward to that. No problem, Greg.
Hey, I appreciate the invite and thank you for hearing me.
You bet. No problem. Thanks again.
Yes, sir.
Be sure to subscribe, like the video. And if you want to join the membership, there's also a membership on the main YouTube page. You can join for like $2 or $3.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you
Anyway,
so much.
We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, so I posted a link. If anybody else wants to join, I'm going to post it again. If anybody else wants to join the show, we will absolutely talk about those things. Right now, I'm going to go to some really good conversation we have going in the comment section. Oh, before I do that again, I'm going to reiterate, if you join the show, in other words, you become a paying subscriber, the cheapest amount to do that is for $2.99. There are 2 other tiers. When you go into the subscription page, you can see the difference in the tiers. But I'm just letting you guys know when we get a lot of comments, really the only way I can highlight them is if I'm seeing them as highlighted. Otherwise, they'll just fall in and I may or may not get to it. But please don't take it personal if your comment isn't gotten. It's just I'm trying to read a bunch and sometimes I miss them. Let's see. I think that's a good point, Cougar Tracks, what you got there. Let's see here. Devil Frog. Yeah, Devil Frog's one of my partners. Hey, shout out to you. UConn is a flagship on the Eastern Seaboard. They'll get an invite before Memphis. Yeah, I could definitely see that. The one thing about Memphis that's attractive is the FedEx money, right? If they're willing to maybe become the main provider, they sign some crazy deal and they give a bunch of money to the Big 12. They could like Doug just said, they could highlight their bowl games or whatever, their championship game. I think right now that's Dr. Pepper, but anyway, they would be good. But it's that kind of same idea that SMU tried to do. This idea, and it came from John Canzano. I don't know if SMU had anything to do with it, but this idea these schools can pay money, a certain amount, to get into a league. I really don't like. One, I don't think it'd ever happen. I just don't think everybody's that small. And the other thing is, you bring them in, and then there's no competitive advantage to having them in the conference. No, it doesn't make any sense. Let's see here. I'm going to post a link if you guys want to join the show. I'm going to call out a few more people. By the way, BR is a paying subscriber, and he came and then had to take off. So BR, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let's see here. So Moan Vision. Oh my gosh, he's talking. How you doing, Moan?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Boy, I feel honored to have you here. Thank you so much for joining the show.
No problem at all. You messaged me on Twitter. What did you want to ask?
So, you have been very clear on Greg's show, right? You've been very clear and concise. No expansion without Notre Dame, and some of these other things that you've always done that, right? So now that the Big 12 is pretty much where they're at and probably going to be there for a little while, still, what is your tiering for the different leagues? I'm really curious to see how you've sort of, now that we've come through most of realignment, if anything happens, it'll be a shock. I think the Pac will get a contract and we'll be playing ball again. But yeah, I really am interested in your opinion on status right now.
Oh, I would still put the Big 12 at number 5.
Okay.
Top to bottom, I would put them at number 4. The biggest brand in the Big 12 now is BYU.
Right.
The Pac still having Washington, Oregon.
Right.
I'm going to put them in a higher tier just because they have higher brands.
Right.
Eventually, the Big 12 I see being number 3.
Okay.
And that's based on what the Big 12 decides to do and not do in expansion.
Okay.
As I've said many times, I don't think the Big 12 can add any more G5 teams.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's just better to stay at 12 and wait and see what happens
Right.
with the Pac, with the ACC. You don't fill up on salad when you're at the buffet.
You're right.
You wait for the main course. So, I mean, there's a lot of schools that aren't going to fit the Big 10, the SEC, that can eventually be targets of the Big 12 that would be better fits for them culturally, as well as adding more value to the conference itself.
6 months ago, I would have disagreed with you. But the way things have shaken out, there are a couple exceptions I take. For instance, Oregon. If we really dive into Oregon, and I was looking, Wild Ute is my partner on the Holy Rival show, and he's a data guy, right? He goes in and he deals with money all the time at a bank. So when he comes out and he's preparing for a show, he has these stats that I don't even know where he gets the information. They're not Altimore stats. They're not even Sam Bradshaw stats. Ryan Thomas. I mean, these are numbers that I don't think anybody's put together. And I saw one that he showed me last night that showed the research dollars for the entire Pac-10 or Pac-12, and it was, what was it, 15 billion for Washington, and then it went down from there. Stanford was second, but the one that stood out to me, and it's remarkable that this happens and yet they're still in the club, is Oregon. They weren't even, I don't even think they were a billion. They were barely, it was a chart, and they were barely any color at the bottom. So how does the Big 10, who's very up on, they want to be prestigious. They think they are prestigious with the schools they have and, the education and research. How does that work? Because Oregon to me is one guy, and that's Phil Knight. So I don't get the rest of it.
That's true. And I will say, as a Big Ten alum, it is a prestigious conference. Every member is an AAU save Nebraska. And that's only because Nebraska's medical school is off campus.
Right.
What hurt Oregon more than anything else is the legislature in the state of Oregon has set that neither Oregon or Oregon State can have a medical school.
Oh.
There's an independent medical school for Oregon. Now, they both collaborate with it, but they can't count that towards their research dollars.
Okay.
The main thing that's holding Oregon back from the Big Ten has nothing to do with their research.
Okay. What is
It,
it?
it has to do with things that they're doing off the field in regards to NIL and recruiting.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I
I
won't get
hadn't
into
heard that
specific.
before.
Well,
Right.
I won't get into too many specifics, but they were
Right.
told not to do something and they did something.
Really?
And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Okay.
So, but they didn't have the votes. Washington didn't even have the votes within the Big Ten.
Right.
And it's just more of a thing where people want to hit the pause button, see where we're at. We didn't want to be perceived as killing the Pac-12,
Right. I appreciate that.
dealing that death blow, having legal issues with it.
Right.
And as I've told Will Duke, I call him Will Duke. There's the Big Ten has to look out further into the future for their next expansion candidates.
I agree.
And they're not going to limit themselves to who they can get quick.
Okay.
They're going to limit themselves to who they can get that's the best fit.
Okay.
So they're not going to go out of their way to just go grab Oregon and Washington right now. And Michigan and Wisconsin would love to have Washington in the group.
Okay.
As the two big research universities in our conference. They'd love to add Washington.
Why not Washington and Stanford?
Stanford is a separate thing. Stanford's a private school.
Okay.
All the schools within the Big Ten are part of what's known as the Big Ten Academic Alliance.
Okay.
And the schools with medical centers are part of the Cancer Research Consortium. What happens is when you join the conference, you're required to join both of those affiliations.
All right.
As a private school, Stanford brings in billions of dollars in research.
Right.
Once you're part of the academic alliance, that means somebody from an Ohio State could access every piece of information in the Stanford library.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that could be a loss of research dollars for Stanford. It could also be an increase of research dollars for Stanford.
Okay.
But it's something they have to agree to. It's one of the things that I think will hold Stanford back from committing to the Big Ten. They don't want to be a part of the academic alliance. They don't want to be part of the Cancer Research Consortium.
Okay. So thank you, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a great education. I really appreciate that. And I wasn't being silly when I was saying I've really listened to you and paid attention to what you're saying over the last, it's probably been 6 months. And I really value your opinion and use it to help form mine. So you said Big 12, which obviously now BYU is part of the Big 12, which is great. I don't know if you saw our celebration on Twitter, but it was a pretty big deal on campus. What takes them from 5 in your mind to 3? Because you said it would move eventually.
It's going to be the addition of more brands.
Oh, okay.
I think adding Louisville, Pitt, some of these schools that have more of a. I mean, BYU is the largest brand in the Big 12 right now. We can say that.
Right.
I don't think there's a larger marketing brand in the Big 12 other than BYU.
Right.
And that's no offense meant to anybody from Kansas, obviously, with their basketball program. But BYU is a national brand. They hold a national championship. They claim a national championship in football. I know there's some dispute there, like there are with all national championships.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but I think adding additional brands to it would help. As much as I love the University of Cincinnati, my partner, she's an alum from the University of Cincinnati.
Right.
It just doesn't move the needle the same way adding a brand like a Colorado would. Even though Cincinnati in the last few years has been much better in football than Colorado has.
Right. I agree with you. 100%. I agree with you. Somebody got in an argument with me about 3 weeks ago, and for some reason, I decided to debate him on Twitter. I normally don't do that, but this one guy was rubbing me wrong. He kept saying, well, he was a Pac-12 guy, and he said, we want to get rid of Colorado, we want to get rid of Arizona, and we want to replace them with San Diego State and SMU, and that's a straight across trade. And I for one thing, that's lunacy. I don't even know how you start that conversation that way. But the second part of it is the perception is just because the schools might be down in, let's call it football, the brand itself is something completely different. They're not necessarily hand-to-hand combined. So you can have a great brand that has some down years. Doesn't mean the brand isn't good.
Right. Right. But I mean, there's overall, I mean, Colorado even has a national championship within
Right.
the last 30
1990,
years.
I was
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the fifth down.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's more value in brands now, and
Right.
I understand completely where some fans would feel left out, and they almost feel that you're being talked down to when you mention brand value.
Right.
But brand value is going to be the most important thing moving forward for all conferences, and that's been evidenced by the fact of what we've seen from the Big Ten and the SEC.
Right.
The SEC adds Texas and Oklahoma. The Big Ten adds USC and UCLA.
Yep. And it's
And
competition. It's
right,
competition.
right.
Yeah.
But it's in that arms race. I think the Big 12 has positioned itself, thanks to Brett Yormark. I think he's done an incredible job as commissioner.
Right.
He's positioned himself to just wait, sit back, and let it kind of fall to him, which is what he needs to do. The
Right.
Big 12 does not need to expand right now. They can wait. If Colorado and Arizona decide to stay with the Pac, they can wait. Those schools will be available to them in 3 to 5 years. The Pac-12 is not going to survive as a conference.
I know that. Yeah. I
And I've said it on Greg's show many times. If they sign a media deal, this will be their last media deal.
Yes.
And everybody's going to be getting all the money they can and trying to make their contingency plans for where they land moving forward, because they obviously all know that the Pac-12 will not be there in 2030. It might not be there in 2026.
Right. And that's actually, I think, the next tipping point is that negotiation for the new college football playoff ticket. So
yes,
yeah, I 100,000% agree with you. I'm going to bring in. Do you know who Immaculate is?
Oh yeah, he loves to follow me.
Yeah. Well, there you go. He's a stalker. Just so everybody who's watching, if you don't know these two guys, I've known Immaculate now for a while. This is the first time getting a chance to speak with Moen, and I got them both off the best show that I follow, which is Greg Pflugart's show. So none of this I came up with. These are guys that I've come to respect, and their opinions carry a lot. If you like my show, I suggest you follow them. All right, Immaculate, you clicked in here, so you obviously wanted to engage in this. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I hear you just met him and he's already the program director. This guy moves fast.
He does. Yes. He got promoted kind of like that guy in fatigues on Seinfeld, went from the mailroom all the way to the vice president. So that's basically what he's done here.
Come rolling in here late and he's already got the job. Jeez. All right.
Well, once you get when you're not here, I mean, we got to fill the boat.
So.
Let's go.
I was gone at the wrong time.
Right.
No, all right, where are you guys at though?
We were just talking about why right now Moen thinks that the Big 12 is number 5, but after everything blows up in the ACC and the Pac-12, he kind of sees them going to number 3. And I was asking him, what's it gonna take to get to that point? And then we ended up on the negotiation for the new CFP in 2026.
What makes them number 5? Just curious.
I think they don't have the brand power that the Pac-12 does right now. I think they're a better conference top to bottom in football strength, but I think the brands of Oregon, Washington, Stanford, those brands are going to keep the Pac above them temporarily until the Pac goes away.
Well, I would say if all that mattered 100% was brands, I'd say you are 100% correct. But as we've come to see, that's not quite everything. So I might disagree with you a little bit in terms of that numbering. Not on brands, but geography matters. Who's got the deal? Really, geography is probably the number one reason why Big 12, I would list them above the Pac right now. I would probably put ACC above the Big 12 right now, largely for the same reason.
Yeah. I put the ACC still at number 3. I don't think. Yeah.
And it's
in rating the Big 12 and the Pac, I'm not saying it's a blow away. It's 4A and 4B,
Right.
I'm not putting the Pac at some huge advantage over the Big 12. It's close, but I think those brands, being nationally recognized brands, just gives it the edge over the Big 12 currently.
I mean, but what are we like if it was like a race, like what are they ahead of them in? Because Big 12 got to deal with Fox and ESPN, whereas Pac has neither. And Pac used to have both. So I would say geography is actually working into a bigger deal right now than brand is.
I don't disagree with you on the geography point, but brand still matters.
Sure.
I think that's why Fox was so gung ho to get Oregon and Washington into the Big Ten.
Right.
And the presidents put a halt to it because the brand value. They would have been willing to pay the extra $200 million, Fox alone, to get those two brands into the Big Ten. So yeah, I still think that brand, the brands matter a little more. And I think BYU coming into the Big 12 conference gives it a huge lift because of BYU is technically a national brand. I would put BYU as a national brand. I wouldn't put them on like a Notre Dame national brand. They're up there. I mean,
no, yeah. I agree with you 100%. By the way, obviously I'm a Cougar, but yeah, I think you could say that it's international even, right?
Yeah. So, oh, absolutely. With the Mormon population and Samoa and the other island. I mean, and that's a huge recruiting coup for him to get some of those offensive linemen and for some of them defensive linemen, man. Those guys are monsters.
That's where Lavelle really stood out. He was a master recruiter, right? And he could go out there and those guys would come. What happened when Lavelle retired? Sorry, Immaculate, I'm cutting in. 1 second.
It is your show.
Little history lesson. When Lavelle left, they tried to bring in a slick Gary Croton, an NFL guy, to take a brand and sort of refresh it. Well, what he did instead is he turned his back on tradition and history and said, I'm just going to do it my own way. And 3 years later, the program was burned to the ground. So the recruiting international part is actually real. Right now, it's a toss-up with Utah, though. So BYU's got some ground to make up in that regard.
Right, and like I've told Will Duke, his name's Will Duke. I eventually see Utah probably making it into the Big Ten.
I would disagree with that, but you go ahead.
I do see it happening simply because, and I told Greg this as well, I think the Big Ten wants a sort of bridge from Nebraska to the West Coast.
Right.
For the reasons I've mentioned. I know Immaculate kind of think Stanford might join. I still think Stanford's a hard out.
Oh, no. I think Stanford would have joined as a one sport team.
Okay.
I think they would have joined in football and nothing else, and I'm pretty sure the Big Ten probably said, no.
Yeah. The Big Ten's not going to allow them without joining the Academic Alliance.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what Stanford doesn't want to join. They were willing to put football there because as a single sport, they don't have to join the BTAA.
Right. And Immaculate thinks we're going to 25 schools.
I know. That's what
I think we're going to 24, and I think that means you got to have 6 teams in a West Coast pod.
Right.
See,
so
if you're going to that point, I think that I got you beat on the math game 25-24, and I'd take that challenge any day.
Okay.
Like if I get someone to even think at 24, that's good. Like if you want to think 24, I just leave it at that because it's not going to matter which one you believe. But if you think it can go that big, that's really all that matters at this point.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I think that's what you're going to get with all 3 conferences. I think you're going to get a Big 12 at 24 to 25 range. The SEC might only go to 20.
I can see that.
Because they do want to stay as regional as possible, which,
right,
that's their. But I can see Utah making it into the Big Ten as last team in the West Coast pod.
Yeah, but this is the part where people don't like to hear. They don't like to hear that conferences are put together almost kind of like horse races are. Yeah, it's a competition out there, but they know exactly who is out there against who, and that's how they run the odds. That's how they kind of figure out who's going to win. And it's the same case when you're building a conference. You don't want to just take all your best horses and throw them all in the same race together. If you take Utah, Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, okay, who are your loser programs? Who are the ones that are going to be the ones that fall down while the others go up? Because that's
Well,
what
you're
you're gonna
forgetting.
have.
I would add Nebraska in there too. So I'm actually adding Nebraska into that pod, saying you've got Nebraska, Utah, Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA.
You must be from like Ohio State or something.
Yeah.
He is from Ohio State.
This guy's suggesting Nebraska on a West Coast pod. Wow.
Well, I mean, if you look at a map, it's not the worst.
I would say that you're likely going to see Colorado join if what you're saying is true. If it was going to be 4 of 6, four divisions of 6,
if Colorado was available, if Colorado was available, probably right. I don't know that Colorado is going to be available.
Colorado's always available.
Well,
Isn't everybody always available? I mean,
well,
heck, they're jumping at money left and right.
I mean, if think about it, if they've even had a whiff from the Big Ten to them, that would be a pretty good reason why maybe they aren't just jumping into the Big 12's arms. Unless they get
I will
word from the Big 12
I will say this without getting into too many specifics.
Uh-huh.
There are people in the Big Ten who have told people in the Pac-10 that they are still candidates.
Mm-hmm.
They have also told them that they're not going to take any schools until 2026. So there are allies within the Big Ten to add a Utah.
Can I add something to that for the viewers?
Sure.
And then you keep going. To add someone for 2026 means you're deciding in 2024. Okay, continue.
Yeah, you're going to decide that.
Yeah.
But
it takes 2 years.
There are votes within the Big Ten Conference that would prefer a Utah over a Cal. And some of that has to do with politics.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who would ally to get a Utah in over a Cal.
What's interesting about that is that the demographics do not support your argument, Moen. Right.
No.
The demographic for Utah, the demographics are 20 years away. It's a generation before there's enough people to support that level of support in the Big Ten.
Could I throw another ring into that?
Go ahead. That's what
I wasn't necessarily. California definitely suits the bill for what I was saying. So I get why you went there. They're the team that loses to everyone. It's great. It's fine.
Right.
The other one that I would throw into that is ASU or Arizona.
I agree with. Yeah. See, I would take ASU. They're my vote instead of Utah.
Going to be losing more often than winning. It's a great look. Big Ten holds a lot of the meetings in Scottsdale here. I know. Right. There's a lot of Big Ten folks here who would love to catch late season games in Tempe. It was an uphill battle until they got AAU. And I can talk.
Yeah.
And say,
well, let's just put it this way: that a lot of Pac-10 schools were told that they were still candidates.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that had to be.
And
yeah.
I'm not just saying Utah, but
I think at the end of the day, we've come through this now. It's July 2nd. We made it past, the whole SDSU and SMU thing got blown up. And we're back to basically where we started, except for the Pac-12 still doesn't have a contract. But going along with both of you guys, I think the idea that they get a contract now is fine. But how long they stay in the league, 2-3 years. I agree with Moen when he first said 2026. I think if you're going to do realignment, it's going to be based around that. And the argument against Utah, and I'm not for or against Utah, I'm just stating facts. The demographics in Utah are not great to support a big move to the Big Ten. ASU is ripe for the picking. Mm-hmm. I could definitely see ASU going.
Yeah. I'm not saying that ASU wouldn't. ASU is a dark horse candidate, just as Utah is a dark horse candidate. Right, I'm just saying from the people I've spoken to that there are people who are for Utah.
Okay.
Who aren't opposed to Utah. That might be opposed to another school in the Pacific Northwest. So there's going to be a lot of give and take in these things where somebody's going to say, okay, we'll give the vote for this school, but we want this school.
Right. Okay.
So
That's fair.
it could be a compromise candidate, basically, where you're getting two. But there are people within the Big Ten due to politics who are not very high on Cal. They weren't really high on UCLA, but UCLA brought USC. That was a package deal more or less. So they sort of tolerated UCLA, but
I want
yeah,
to see the 30 for 30 on that. UCLA instead of Washington or Stanford.
yeah,
Seriously.
it's because of the market. It's
But 2 in LA? Why do you need 2? USC.
you
takes
lock
whole
down the
thing.
market. You lock down the market.
I just
Well,
think
it's
it's
not just-
overkill.
I think that it had largely to do with when the Stanford thing blew apart.
Right.
They then looked at Washington. That's too
Yeah, I
far
still
away
don't know
for
about
USC.
Washington.
It's too far away. Like if you're going to be out there all on your own for 2 years or whatever it's going to end up being, you at least want to have something over there that you're kind of comfortable with and you can build with. And I think USC probably just said, no, we need UCLA to do this now. And that was the best choice out of, okay, so they're not going to do this. We're not just going to take Washington and someone else. USC
Right.
was the piece to grab.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So when they went UCLA, it was kind of like compromise time. Okay. That's what I think, because they're
sorry.
definitely not better than Washington as a take.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Well, UCLA, I think, is a better brand than Washington.
I think
With
you
the
have to-
basketball, I think the UCLA brand goes above the Washington.
But
Despite Washington's national championships in football, I don't think we can just sit on the now.
But
Well,
as
yeah,
a powerhouse university, though, Washington is
the
huge.
research in Washington is the biggest.
It owns
Well,
so
well,
much property.
Sure,
down
but
there, it's
UCLA,
just a monster.
UCLA is not some terrible school without its own research and
I'm not
everything
saying-
else.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying
but-
it is at all. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, just from like a university standpoint, Washington is a monster, whereas UCLA is part of a
Right,
larger
but it's not a
university
great
structure.
travel partner for USC to have Washington up. I mean, you know what I mean? It's
I
you
get
had
it.
to have somebody close to USC. It
And
had to be
That's what
UCLA,
it.
Stanford, Cal. It had to be one of those three teams.
Sure.
And if you get down to those three teams, it's UCLA.
Right.
I mean, the basketball, the Rose Bowl. They occupy the Rose Bowl. That's
Right.
huge in the Big Ten.
Actually,
Like
you know
Greg's
what?
team was going to play in the Rose Bowl.
I actually hadn't considered that, Moen. Actually, that's a good point. Just having Pasadena. Yeah, I do. Just that, actually, now that I think about it, just basically getting a school just for the location. I think that and the Coliseum. Yeah.
Well,
I
the
agree
Big
with that.
Ten,
I agree with
the
that.
Big Ten promo, if you ever watch it, it opens on the Rose Bowl, and
Does
then it
it?
goes,
Flying over? Okay.
yep. So it'll open on the Rose Bowl,
Okay.
which, I mean, it's huge for us still. So, but I just want to make a point that your caller made earlier about the G5 schools and being left out and a class
Right.
action.
Yep.
I don't think the G5 schools will be left out. And I know Immaculate's probably going to kill me for this take, but I think the new option for the playoff is 12 best, no AQs. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, the G5's never going to tolerate that." Well, you got to remember, 99% of those G5 schools aren't ever making the playoffs, but they are getting some of that playoff money. So
they have equal say in it, and
sure
yes,
they do.
They're getting money right now, but where I think the stickler where neither one of us could really say the other is wrong is, are they okay with that being it? You know what I mean? Like you're saying they would, and I'm saying there's another option. Now, whether I'm right or wrong or not, I don't know. I don't have someone in the background here telling me this stuff. It's just mathematically, if they can get it down to 6 conferences total, that includes a lot of G5 realignment here very soon, then it's closer, more akin to, but not the same as the NFL, the way that operates.
Right.
And when you're the networks and you're saying, we want to figure out how to make this a lot bigger so we can make a whole lot more on the advertising and then pay out a whole lot more to these guys, you got to look at what you know works and get some
return. Yeah,
like,
you have to get something.
You got to
back.
kind of look at it and say, how can we take this and try to do what's working over here, but in a slightly different way?
Right.
And that's kind of why I've come up with this. Now, is that way it's going to end up being? Honestly, probably not. But I do think that the Power 5 structure, the way it's set up with the voting, actually allows maybe a logical ending where everyone's kind of working in the same direction to happen. We'll see.
Does that do the three of us believe that by 26 the dust will have settled enough that we'll actually know what that structure is going to be like for the next 10 years or whatever that term is? Or is it still going to have pieces? Like, is the ACC going to be gone by then, right? What happens with the Pac-12 when the big, we're talking about the biggest sort of earth-shattering type things. Do the three of us think that happens before 26?
Right. Well, that's an if-and scenario.
Right.
There's a lot of moving parts to the ACC. I'm
Right.
also of the belief that in order for the ACC to collapse, Notre Dame has to exit.
Notre Dame has to move, just like with the Big Ten. I agree with that.
Right. They have to exit. That's the best out for the rest of the schools in the ACC.
And is that the
So-
tipping point?
That would be the tipping point. At that point, if Notre Dame joined the Big Ten, the SEC would have no choice but to respond and try and add a Florida State, a Clemson,
Right. No, North Carolina.
a North Carolina.
Right.
Um,
Virginia Tech. Yeah, I get you.
yeah. So, but like I said, that's an if-and thing. Will the ACC be there? Well, that's up to Notre Dame.
Right. Of course.
Notre Dame actually has all the control in the world over all this realignment, and they have for the last 50 years.
And don't you know that Jack Swarbrick loves every second of it?
Right.
Well, he's
yeah.
retiring, so
Okay,
Well,
well, they love the attention. They want to be the center. They want people knowing that they're the tipping point. They eat that stuff up.
Right.
So it's just how long is the rest of the world going to just wait on one school that frankly hasn't been anything since '88?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. A lot of people want to blame Texas for realignment. And as much as I hate Texas,
Yeah.
and I hate Texas, if Notre Dame had joined the Big Ten with Penn State
Right.
in the 90s when they were invited,
Right.
you probably would not have any of this realignment. There'd still be a Big 12
Yep.
with Colorado and Nebraska. SEC might have added South Carolina and a few schools like that. You'd still have an ACC. You'd still have a Big East.
Right.
Notre Dame's wanting to stay a snowflake in the college football landscape
It's insane.
for the last 50 years has caused the majority of problems we have now. So
I'm just surprised that the rest of the world's okay with that. I don't get why everybody's willing to let them push them around.
it's even worse than that. Notre Dame has an equal vote
I
on
know.
the playoff.
They represent an entire conference by themselves.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
They're basically the tie vote between the G's and the P's.
Yeah, I don't
Right.
understand it.
And so I agree that they are kind of the fulcrum in that. And it's funny, I was laughing because I had recently told Bomber
Guys, keep talking.
a
I'm going to mute my
scenario
phone for a second.
that I am not willing to say out in public yet because it's just a little too crazy for now. But I would honestly have said no, even though it makes all the sense in the world for this to happen by 2026. I just could not have seen it happen until recently with the Feinbaum and Herb Street. I guess you could call them revelations.
well, they're
Because
going to push their narrative with ESPN. So that's obviously a narrative that
they were greenlit.
ESPN, that was put out there by ESPN.
Hell yeah.
ESPN is not going to let opinions go out on their airwaves unless it's opinion
Well, and it's
at
two of
ESPN.
your biggest connected guys within there. Like,
Right. And I think that's what the Pac-12 is more scared about in terms of exposure. It's not getting the games on the air. It's almost that ESPN won't talk about them enough. Their highlights are going to be buried.
It's going to affect their rankings. It's going to affect where they're at the end of the season, how many teams they might get in. And now we're going to have a situation where the number of teams you get in determines how much money you get. So now they're already in a money crunch, and it's going to push them to get even less money. Like on a 12, they might only get 1-2 teams in there, maybe.
Yeah. If
So
if, like I said, if we go to 12 best, I don't see the pack lasting that long. But yeah, the other thing you got to keep in mind is those East Coast riders don't watch West Coast. They they just watch the highlights on ESPN.
And that's when it's on TV. But if there's no highlights are based off of there actually being cameras there and it being picked up and it being on a decent network. If none of that's going on, if it's just on streaming, if it's bad quality, the rights, in order to get the rights to replay that on your show, in order to have it on your talk show, it could get real convoluted real quick, depending upon who the pack actually signs with and how much that footage will actually end up on ESPN shows or Fox shows. And a lot of the guys who vote on rankings and whatnot, like you're saying, they don't have time to watch all this, so they just get real quick blurps from here and there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, that's why the rankings are kind of a joke, and I don't think they're going to last as they are now going into the future. They'll have a part, but not nearly as big of a part, and that's part of the 6+6 type of style thing, whereas the schools that make it are based upon results in a postseason matter.
So I'm going to jump in here, guys. I got to get some comments from people. Are you willing to stick around while I go through some of these?
Go for it.
Yeah, knock yourself out.
All right. So Earl Carr is a new member. Thank you, Earl. Appreciate it. Everybody say hi in the comments. He's joined the Mafia family. I really appreciate him being here. Let's jump down and there was a comment here. Let's see, Mr. Monkey. So he put this is a while ago, actually. The good member of the conference is actually a minor concern. We were talking about UConn being a potential good part of the conference. He says, I think they prefer a Big East or ACC type conference. Do you guys think that's a better fit for UConn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
stay
absolutely.
in the Big East or join the ACC?
Until there's a slot open for them, because I think, like I said, the Big 12 can just eat whatever's left over.
Right.
Grab that Louisville, grab that Pitt, grab that Syracuse. And if you have a slot then, go ahead and grab that UConn then. But don't grab the UConn now waiting, because you don't know what's going to be available. Settle for a Ford Fairlane when you can get a Corvette.
Right, of course. Here's a good question. Sorry, Mac.
I was going to say, on a different note, the only reason why I think the Big 12 is really talking big about taking UConn is it's Yormark. While he's saying that, he's not looking at us. He's looking at ESPN. He's saying, I'll take UConn. I'll do you that favor. You're hurting right now. You want to get some new tax breaks from the state of Connecticut. I will take them.
I think that's quite possible.
So as far as where they fit best, I think they'll go wherever they'll be taken. If ACC would take them, they'd already be there. So, yeah, I tend to think that if they can get into the Big 12, that's a great place for UConn.
Okay. I want some Eastern travel partners for West Virginia personally. I would like to. Cincinnati's going to be great. UCF, a little far away, but yeah, I don't have any problems. BYU's used to traveling, right? So not only through independence, but the entire 50-year span since Lavelle took over in 72. Now this will be 51. We've gone all over the country, and
in a lot of ways, you're like Notre Dame. A lot of ways, you're like Notre Dame. You couldn't find anybody to play, so you had to go places to play people. Right. So. And
they're used to that. Kalani's built that into the system. Their conditioning is all built around their travel. So anybody who's just looking at BYU now going into the Big 12, this doesn't go to Cougar Track's comment, but really quick, they're saying they might win 4 games or 5 games or 6 games. Maybe a regular team will do that. But since BYU has pretty much been up for this the last 5, especially the last 4 years, I think that they could surprise. They could win 7 or 8 games. What do you guys think about that?
That's totally reasonable. I'm more interested to see how Cincinnati fares out, losing Luke Fickell.
Right. Yeah.
He's a generational coach for them. We need to see if that they can keep. I mean, what he did with the facilities and the recruiting there is a complete 180 from what it was. It'll be interesting to see if Satterfield can keep up with that, or if they take a step back. Yeah. I don't know that they got that hire right. I think that they could have went a little better on the hire. He underperformed at Louisville. I don't know why, but they grabbed him.
They could only win 3 games this year. That's how much That's how much the
Yeah.
losing the coach makes a difference.
And all the recruits they lost as a result of losing the coach, and all the
Right.
transfers they had because of losing
Yeah.
the coach. So
I think they're going to have, of everybody coming in, everybody's saying Houston's going to have the hardest time. I actually think it's going to be Cincinnati, but we'll have to
Yeah.
see. These are all
Yeah.
guesses. We don't know anything.
Yeah.
Moen, do you want to
Yeah.
add anything to that?
no, of the teams that are joining, BYU is probably going to have BYU's the most ready.
Right.
And then I would put UCF,
Yeah.
and then I would put Houston, and then I'd put Cincinnati. I can see Cincinnati possibly finishing last
Yeah, that would be sad.
in the Big 12 this year. That's at least I made it to the Power 5 before
That's exactly right.
before
Before
Fickle left.
26. Well, and
But like-
26 was the
But like
day
I
that
tell
people
Greg all the
went.
time, I think Luke Fickle is going to take Wisconsin to the playoffs within the next 3. I
Wisconsin-
think Luke Fickle is a top 10 coach in America.
Wow. Okay.
I think they did so well with that hire, and I know everybody was screaming about Matt Rule to Nebraska. The best hire in this offseason has been Luke Fickle to Wisconsin.
That's
Because
cool.
there is so much talent in Wisconsin to recruit. The offensive lineman he's going to get.
Right.
I know he's trying out this new air raid offense. He's taking a page out of Ryan Day's book. We'll see how it goes.
No,
Um,
Wisconsin's traditionally ground and pound. They're going to
It
try to
is,
do air
yeah.
raid.
Yeah,
That's going to be
yeah.
insane.
It's
They
not going
can't
to be
have
air raid, but it is going to be a modern offense. And
That is-
Right.
I
Yeah.
just can't imagine
yep, it's going to
Wisconsin
be something.
Badgers not just digging into the ground and 4 yards and a pound of powder dust in the air, right?
Well,
As a
that's
Hawk,
the way
I'm not
Ohio-
super happy about it either.
Yeah.
that's the way Ohio State used to be too.
I
It's-
know it's true.
even
That's
even
true.
up to Jim Tressel, it was
You're right.
run, and they
It-
asked him, when are you going to run another play? When they start figuring out how to block this one, we'll run another play.
What
Yeah,
about
once-
you? Sorry, Immaculate. I
No,
was
go
just
ahead.
gonna
You were
say, what
saying
was
you
your-
were asking.
No, I was going to ask you. What did you think about that? That what we just talked about?
Well, I definitely think BYU is bred for this, to say the least. The way you guys have already had the coast to coast, the way you're already built on recruiting, this is like a crowning, or this was the candles on the cake, so to speak. You already had all the cake. You just needed the
Right.
pompous round. Cincinnati, yeah, I think they're going to fall off, but it's okay. I mean, I would say last place in the Big 12 is better than first place in the AAC.
Yes. Absolutely.
I know some people will be mad about someone saying that, but in terms of money and then your ability to rebuild in the Big 12, just you can rebuild. Just you got to get your coaches and hires right. Got to
Right.
get some good recruits in there, and then a few years come on back up. But yeah, I think it's going to be BYU and UCF. I don't think Houston and Cincy are going to be all that competitive starting off.
So this is a question that has burned in a lot of people's minds because they're either supporters of BYU or if they're not and they're against BYU. Cougars Tracks is I believe. Actually, I don't know. If they went to 3 conferences, 20 teams each, do you guys think BYU's in that mix?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I do too. But
They're
Immaculate?
there now, so they're not going
Right.
to get kicked out.
Okay. And
Yeah, I don't believe in relegation.
No.
It's never going to happen in the Big Ten.
right.
I don't care. There have to be people who are losers in your conference. There have to be.
That's right.
So
Exactly.
people were saying, well, they're going to kick Rutgers out. Well, Rutgers brought them the New York market.
Right.
Rutgers paid for itself 10 times over with that New York cable package.
And
That's
Rutgers loses without crying about it.
Right.
Yeah.
They're more than
That's
happy
a
to
good
just
point, actually.
take the butt whooping and take the check.
Yeah.
So-
But I think Rutgers is going to do well this year. I think Greg Schiano is really it's hard to win at Rutgers, but I think Greg Schiano is at least going to get them up to where they could be at least maybe 5-7.
And then what? He quits again and goes back to the NFL. Oh my gosh! that
I don't
guy,
know. I don't know.
Trust him.
He's
at
got
all.
so much money at this point.
right.
I don't know that he wants a hassle between, and I
Right.
still don't think he's ever reached his settlement with Tennessee. I think that's still,
Insane.
a
Where he's
job
been.
he was never even allowed to have. So, but I think he's,
Crazy.
but like I was telling Greg the other day, if Maryland was in the Big Ten West, Maryland would have won the Big Ten West last year.
right.
I think
Right.
getting away from divisions is going to help so many teams improve their record. You're not going to have Rutgers having to play Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State every single year. It's hard to win playing
Yeah.
those 4 teams.
Of course
I'm
it
an
is.
Ohio State fan, and it's hard to win playing 3 of those teams.
Right.
That
I
was
agree.
an ungodly schedule for Maryland and Rutgers to walk into in the Big Ten. So
They wanted to be the sacrificial cows, and look where they're at now. So who cares?
I think
Yeah.
they're jumping back into it in the future, though. Eventually, they're going to be in another rough division.
Well, we'll have to see how they
I
do the
think
new
so. We'll
scheduling
see how the
model.
ACC shakes out, because I think,
Right.
yeah, I've like I've said with Notre Dame going, I think if Notre Dame went, you could put Miami, Rutgers, Maryland, North Carolina, Notre Dame in a conference there.
Have
Not
I told
much
you
better.
What?
Have I told you my Eastern division in that whole setup?
No, say
'Cause
it.
it's a beast.
Go ahead.
It would be Notre Dame, Penn State, Miami, Maryland, and Rutgers.
Okay,
And so
it's definitely plausible.
that's one of those where you'll more often than not see like the wild card team come out of either that one or like Ohio State, Michigan, whoever ends up having a second place team in division with a high ranking. But that one, because that's where Notre Dame wants to be. They want to be
Right.
on the East
Yeah.
Coast, and so you got to treat them like that, even though they're in Indiana. And so
Right.
Miami and
And-
Penn State have the old rivalry. Miami was with Rutgers and the Big East, so even though it's kind of all the way down there with them, it would work.
Well, and I get a lot of flack for this too. I think Georgia Tech is still a viable candidate in
I agree
East
with
Coast. And that's another rival for Notre Dame, because they do have a rivalry with Georgia Tech through the years. So that would add
It was,
Miami, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Rutgers, Maryland, and Penn State, depending on if they can get North Carolina.
it was interesting that they weren't in the Magnificent Seven.
that. When they went and talked,
Well,
yeah, they didn't.
of the teams listed, of the
Yeah.
schools listed, GT was not one of them, even though all the rest of them were all of the southern schools,
Yeah.
the southernmost
Right.
schools, except for GT.
Yeah,
So,
you know,
Kind of makes you wonder where
Whatever.
they're looking, what they're thinking, who
Right.
they're talking to.
well, we'll have to see. Don from Kansas says, of course, BYU is in. We all agree with that. Two Masta's in the house. Hey, Two Masta, good to see you. Jim Williams tweet lines up with Larry Pilgrim's info. So just so to catch everybody up, what Larry said on Greg's show was that there's undercurrent going on with there's possibly an Apple deal for the Pac-12. I don't know if they'll change the name or whatever. No expansion. It'll just be the 10 teams. They would sign a GOR, but it would only last, and this is the crazy number, 3 to 5 years. And that would be extremely hard to have any security if that's what they do. The other part of it was, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, was that Apple being the carrier, they would sub-license games back to whoever wanted them, NBC, Fox, ESPN, whatever. So that's what he's talking about, and Jim Williams' tweets are starting to align with that. They're not exactly in line, but they're getting closer. Just in really quick, what do you guys think about the way that that's developed? Do you think we have something done by July 20th?
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, how many times have we been a few weeks away?
I know. I'm not talking about that. I'm just giving
Yeah,
you your opinion.
it's I think Larry's info is probably really accurate. I was really in particular when they said linear concepts.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't say linear partners. They said linear
Right.
concepts.
Yeah.
So I think it could be an Apple only deal with sub-licensed games, somewhere in there. I don't disagree with the 3 to 5 years. I could see a 3-year deal with a 4th and 5th year option.
Right. Yeah. that
Because
makes
like I said, with 2026 coming, those schools want to be able to get out before 2026.
Yeah.
Or at least around that time without some crippling balloon payment to exit the conference.
I just don't know how they get that GOR done. What do you think, Immaculate?
Oh, I think we talked about previously already, and yeah, I would say that Larry, whether or not he talked to someone or not, I don't know, but that scenario seems to me actually probably to be the most likely.
Okay. We don't have to beat that up, but all right, that's great. Two Master, thanks for the comment and love to see you. Thanks for being here. AMAC is in the house. AMAC, he says BYU would be in, of course, no doubt. and he's not a BYU guy, so that means something. Don from Kansas says new teams to a league already pay, in a sense, to enter a new league by taking smaller share of the TV contract money. That's happened except for this new growth that's going to be happening in the Big Ten. They're getting full share, right?
Yeah,
Aren't they
but you
getting
got to
full
remember
share?
too, those schools took out loans against their future earnings. It wasn't just that
Okay.
they were junior members; they took out advanced payments to
Okay.
cover facility upgrades and things like that they needed to do.
Okay.
They did take lower payments, but they also took advances on it, which is why Rutgers still, I don't think, has
A full share.
received a full share
Yeah.
because they took that advanced payment to upgrade their facilities. But
Immaculate, you wanna
USC and
add? Oh, sorry.
UCLA got 100 million because they're USC and UCLA.
Of course.
Let's be honest. I mean,
Yeah. I don't know that would have to be a hard and fast rule. Why couldn't they bring in a Washington and an Oregon and Stanford at a lesser rate if they really wanted to?
Right. Well, they have the leverage to do that.
Yeah. All right. Immaculate, what do you think?
I'd say in this case, timing is everything.
Good point.
Once we get to the point where they can have the P5 vote, they can create the new rules that will allow things to happen. You're closer to a point where you're going to be making so much more money than you are right now that you wouldn't, like, even if they take a partial payment, it's still going to be way more than what we're getting now. If that's getting extended out a little bit, then yeah, they might have to take a partial just to kind of get sorted into it. But I think we're getting close to the point where if we're talking 2026 entrances announced in 2024, then I don't necessarily think it's going to be needed. We'll see, though.
Fair. By the way, if you want to join the conversation, you can do a super chat. That will highlight for me and I'll pull it right up. I'm trying to get through these comments as much as I can. This is a show about conversation, so appreciate you being here. I got two really smart guys here with me, and I love having you be on the show. If you want to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Forget that. Let's see here. The biggest brand, Steve Moser disagrees. BYU's not, Kansas is. You want to say anything about that?
I disagree. I do. Kansas basketball is known in Kansas. UCLA basketball is known across the nation. BYU football is known across the nation.
I think Kansas is pretty big brand-wise in basketball, but I tend to not think of basketball as being as big of a deal.
Right. It's not as big as football. So
yeah, I mean, it's something, but they really do need to have it on an entirely different contract with like some Big East non-football schools. Like just have like a basketball lineup that blows everyone else away. And even then, like how many people are going to watch that? I don't know. I'm not sure how big of a deal that is. I definitely think Kansas is going in the right direction by trying to build up their football.
And they got a good coach right now, so hopefully they take advantage of it. Mr. Monkey says, Mo envisioned that's some interesting stuff about Oregon off the field. That was before Immaculate came on. We're not going to really delve into that. That was just a little information that Moen had. Unless you want to add anything else to it, I'll move along.
I didn't see
basically, Oregon was doing some things that they shouldn't have been doing that upset some people in the Big at some big schools in the Big Ten. Not just Ohio State,
right.
And that's pretty much it. And they're still doing some stuff that's not kosher with some of the people there. There's ways to do things, and there's ways to do things. And putting pictures out on social media with bags of money on the field, probably not the best look.
Really? Wow. Okay.
I mean, if you're going to be a bag man, at least be discreet about it. You put it in a nice black briefcase, leave it on the seat next to you at the train station, and walk away.
Right, of course. Yeah.
So what you're saying
you
is
want to add anything to that?
So what he's saying is that they're fully embracing the NIL era?
Yes, that's what he said.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else about that, but that's kind of funny.
I think it's interesting information. Yeah, and you know what? Between the three of us and the people watching, which is up to 35 concurrent, so that's great. go and do some research, and you might be able to dig more up about that. Find that picture with the money on the actual field. I think that is a bridge too far, in my opinion, but we'll have to see. Let's see. Don in Kansas says the only entities to blame for killing the Pac are the Pac universities who leave. And I guess that's directed at UCLA and USC. I don't understand when you make the argument, Moen, they didn't want to be perceived as killing the conference. They did kill the conference when they took USC. So how can they back up, take a step back, and said, "Oh wait, but it's not us," when the world's going to judge them either way?
Well, that's fine. You can be judged. It's fine to be judged in the court of public opinion. It's a different thing to be judged in a court of law.
Yep.
Okay.
And the people who are responsible for killing the Pac are all the schools that are in the Pac.
Right.
It wasn't just USC and UCLA leaving. There were 10 other schools that employed Larry Scott and supported him.
Yes.
So everybody's got to take a slice of that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The moment the Pac presents a reasonable TV contract to the rest of the schools, the whole Big Ten is legally culpable, goes out the window, because then it becomes a choice.
Yep.
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree with that. AMAX says it's funny how the Big Ten wants to shirk their responsibility for the demise of the Pac-12 and somehow blame it on the Big 12. I don't think the Big Ten's doing that. Have I missed
the Big
something?
Ten's just been quiet about it.
Yeah, they
just shut up about it. It's George Kliavkoff that's pitching those grenades at the Big 12. The Big Ten just took USC and UCLA and said, "Welcome."
That's right.
And we're going to shut our mouths.
It's probably one of the reasons why they're not getting presented with the deal, or they haven't been, is the moment it gets presented, that legality is
gone,
is done. So,
and the perception is the biggest deal. This is
perception
PR.
is a lot, but like in terms of real legal possibilities, the moment they get presented with a deal that's reasonable, that you could work with, any culpability because of taking USC and UCLA goes out the window, legally speaking. People can still say they're to blame, and that's fine. That's opinion. But the Big Ten, when they're making those comments, they're not talking about us. They don't really care what we think. What they're talking about is legally. Could there be litigation involved?
So this is an interesting question. I don't even know that I have an opinion about it, but it is interesting. These universities could simply decouple the Research Alliance from the athletic conference if they wanted. I'm not exactly sure. Do you guys know what that means?
They don't want. They don't want that. You have to realize that with a lot of these schools, especially Ohio State, that research just built a new microprocessor plant down the road that's going to employ thousands of Ohioans in good jobs.
Right.
And the reason they were able to do that was because of the Academic Alliance, because we can pull from everybody's research and everybody can pull from ours. It goes beyond, with the Big Ten universities, it goes beyond just the athletic field into the academics arena. I hate the Michigan Wolverines with a passion, but I've helped raise money for Michigan's Cancer Center.
Right.
It's a big deal. So, and I'm a cancer survivor myself. It's a big deal to be a part of that Big Ten Cancer Research Consortium. It's very, very important to us. And it's why schools like Virginia and Washington or Virginia especially, Virginia's going to get a hard look from the Big Ten because of their medical research. Same is true of North Carolina. It's not just the athletics. We're looking for, and I think Yormark put this the other day, you're looking for a cultural fit as well. It can't just be all about the athletics.
He actually did say that, didn't he? I thought that was quite interesting that we've been hearing cultural fit from the Big Ten and the Pac-10, and that's been Pac-12, and that's been from the very beginning. The whole cultural fit don't fit in with the Big 12, and then he does that interview at BYU of all places, and actually says cultural fit. I thought that was extraordinary, actually.
Matt,
you have an opinion about that?
I think the Big 12 is building its own version of culture. And I think it's becoming more clear, whereas this isn't actually something that's had because it's always had Texas.
Right.
And
well, now they're gone. So.
Not to bang on Texas because Texas is a behemoth, but Texas is about Texas. They were that way when they left the Southwest, and they were that way in the Big 12 with how they looked at the Pac, and then they looked at the ACC, and then they looked at the Big 10, and then they went to the SEC. Without Texas and Oklahoma, the Big 12 now has its own culture of, you could say, this conference is not just trying to be the Big 10 or be the big SEC. It is now actually trying to be itself. And so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And the Big 12's still looking for their identity too. I mean, it's
agree.
not. It's going to grow the more expansion they have when they get more into the. I mean, right now, and I hate this terminology that the West Coasters use, the truck stop conference.
Yeah.
But they're trying to assign an identity to the brand before it's even had a chance to fully decide what it is.
Right.
Adding a school like Colorado, getting into Arizona, picking up a school like Syracuse, Pittsburgh, getting into the Midwest, the Rust Belt. So we don't know what the Big 12 culture is yet. We've got an idea. We know where it's at today.
Right.
But 5 years from now, it could be someplace completely different.
And if they're successful and go out and win games, that does a lot of the speaking for you, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. Devil Frog, I love you, but this is one thing I know. Well, at least let me repeat what Bob Thompson said. Bob Thompson, in like the first week of September last year, he said the most important things right now in realignment aren't the viewers, it's brands and it's rivalries, or 1 and 2. And he said if you can put brands and rivalries together in the same conference, that it elevates the value of the entire conference, which is why I would love to have Utah, right? And if we got Arizona, I'd love to have Arizona State. And when Colorado came in, we could do something. Potentially, they could get back and do something with Iowa State or Oklahoma State. All I'm saying is those rivalries is what drives business. It drives eyeballs, and it's not just households and viewers. But I didn't say that. Just be clear. I'm repeating what Bob Thompson said. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
I would 100% agree with Bob Thompson on
it.
Yeah. It's important in the Big Ten. Well, in the Big Ten especially. I mean, I'm an Ohio State guy. I'm an alum. I'm an Ohio State fan. There will never be a rivalry bigger than the game. I mean, in the state of Ohio, we cross out the letter M on street signs.
Right.
It's nuts.
Yep.
But I will equally be glued to my television set to watch Minnesota and Wisconsin fight for that axe. I will watch Minnesota.
The Minnesota-Iowa game is much bigger.
Oh, here we go. Okay. There we go. Now we're getting into something.
Go ahead, man.
Moen,
I would just add to that real quick.
Yeah,
I think brands and viewers are the exact same. You're a big brand because you have viewers. Like, if that's what we're talking about here. So, saying like there's a difference. Like, this little brand has more viewers than that big brand. I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, brands and viewers, it's one and the same. You're a big brand because you bring in the viewers.
Right.
So I think of it as the exact same. It's just someone using a different word for the same thing.
And maybe that's what Devil's saying here. Yeah, it's quite possible Frog is just saying, anyways, I just wanted to bring it up because it stood out to me, because that I know for a fact that what Bob Thompson said is sort of what I've been using as gospel.
I think he's dead on about rivalries, especially going forward. I think they're going to matter more in the future than they do in the past, because as you get more and more content to offer to the networks, they don't have more and more channels to provide it on. So a team like BYU, you might not normally get on as much, but if Utah comes and joins, and everyone might say, oh, that's 2 Utah schools, that's not a good idea. The market numbers there and everything, it doesn't matter. No. It's that one game a year that those 2 are going to provide, and that's going to fill a slot almost every single year, because both these teams are going to be competitive. So Utah, 3.3 million people in the entire state, not a big deal. I get it. People are going to say that. But if you get Utah and BYU in the same conference, in my opinion, they're more valuable than separate.
Moen, do you disagree with that? Did we lose Moen? Moen, you there? He might have walked away from his computer. I think you would probably agree with that. Let's see. AMAX says brands matter so much. Where's the deal? You're talking about the Pac deal. Nobody here can give you the answer there. We don't know. Nobody knows.
The brands matter, and when you look at an Oregon versus Georgia,
Right.
and those and that rating vastly outweighs anything else that you see as a conference rating for the pack. I mean, doubled it. So they matter, but they want to bring them to play East Coast and Central teams. So
Right.
that's
Time zones is killing the pack, which is
Yeah.
what Immaculate said at the very beginning. I agree with that. Devil Frog, BYU, TCU, Notre Dame, and the 3 service academies have the most secondary fans according to charts and graphs guy, not me. So there's that. That nobody denies that. You're exactly right. For total number of exposed people for the brands, it's true. They do carry high numbers, but unfortunately, those high numbers don't always equate to dollars and cents. And I think BYU is going to be fine, but like the service academies, I don't know why they don't get in the same conference again and play for that trophy. Anyway, let's
that
see
could
here.
be happening.
Yeah, it absolutely could. Mr. Monkey says even Stanford fans don't watch Stanford.
It's true. You ever see their stadium on
I
game
have.
day?
Yes.
It's ghost town.
BYU played Stanford this last year, and it was 3/4 all blue and white. It was sad, really.
If I could say in Stanford's defense on that, though, it's a very small school, and their graduates get spread out around the country, around the world.
Right.
So making it back to San Francisco just for a football game for these people, it's not very feasible.
Fair. I don't know. Do you know what this question means? How many shots did Stanford fans buy in Omaha during the College World Series? Did they go this year? I haven't been following college basketball, so I can't answer it.
I don't know on baseball very well.
Okay.
I know that there was some bar where there was like a big deal about the shots
Okay.
being bought there, and some team there were people were buying shots to try to say that they bought the most shots at this bar. It was kind of wild, but I'm not sure if Stanford was there or not.
So we've got Pac-12 Pilgrim in the house, who's also a subscriber. How you doing, Larry? Let's see. I don't know where Moen went. Do you want to join the conversation? Let me put the link in and you can join. It's easy. I can. Oh, Moen's gone. That's okay. Let me find the link. Hang on a second. All right, Larry. Take this link and you can join us. I'm just going down through the message board. I saw a lot of people today that were talking on Twitter, and it's hard to communicate on Twitter. So I wanted to do a pop-up show to give people a chance to sort of express what they're thinking. And that's what we're doing. Let's scroll down here. AMAC has the Big Ten will only add a total of 4 out west. I personally believe that is the number. USC, UCLA, Stanford, and Cal. I don't know about Stanford and Cal, though. Plus 4 more from the ACC will get them to 24. Immaculate says the number's 25, which would mean if you were talking maybe 1 out west, it would either be ASU or Utah. I personally don't think it's Utah.
ASU. I think that it's actually going to be ASU.
Yeah, I do too.
And I also think Colorado also gets in, but they're actually going to be in a different division. They'll be over in a division with Nebraska and some others.
Okay. Oh, so not so far west then.
No, because Colorado is congruent to them, so it could be in a different division.
Fair
And
enough.
that's their unique value to the Big Ten is that they
Okay.
don't have to be stuck in the Western Division.
I gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't, at least in that count, unless things changed and the dynamic explodes in a different way, I don't think the math works for Utah quite yet. Maybe in 10 years. Larry says, hey, Cougar Tracks. He's a subscriber, so I read his comment. And there he is. Larry is set up. You've got everything working. Congratulations. And he can't get his audio working, so I'm just going to wait for him to talk.
We could just
Let's
watch
see.
it work.
Moen and Immaculate has the Big Ten told Kansas anything about 2026. Have you heard that?
We've known for a while that they were vetted.
Right.
They're basically approved if the numbers are right.
Okay.
So I would say I have them down as like a one of the final editions. Like first thing that's going to get handled is the ACC, then some
Okay.
PAC stuff, then maybe 1 or 2 Big 12 schools still get pulled up like Kansas and
Right.
Oklahoma State.
Okay, that's fair. Moen's back. Hey, Moen. Are you there? Again, I'm not sure he's even really there, to be honest. Moen, are you there? Let's see. Larry says when he was just watching, he says college football playoff money is going to be a big part. Yeah, everybody knows that those cash days are coming. Let's see. Don says Kansas is not going to the big. Yeah, well, right now it doesn't look like they are. Not quite yet. Steve Moser says Kansas does have infinity times more national championships in basketball the last 20 seasons than 14 Big Ten teams combined, though. Nobody is arguing that, Steve.
Kansas is a blue blood.
Yeah, definitely. Nobody. Don't take it personal. We're just talking about when realignment comes around. It's about football. So basketball matters, but football drives the bus. So, Larry, are you back? He's getting frustrated. I told him I'd help him. I called him yesterday. I said, hey, Larry, let me out. No, he had his wife helping him. So, let's see. Mr. Monkey says, Don, I generally agree unless it gets to 24 schools. We just talked about that. There he goes. But if Colorado is a candidate, Kansas should be a candidate too. I don't think anybody is saying it's not. Larry again said could easily see a unit system for a college football playoff. Mr. Immaculate, you just did. Was this before or when you joined? I don't know for sure, but I would bet that they have. What's that an answer to?
Oh, there was a little side conversation going on. That was about Kansas possibly joining the Big Ten. I says I don't know, but
okay.
Like I was saying, they've been vetted. So
yes, I know they were one of the 20 or whatever schools that went through that process. If you want your comment to be read and guaranteed, like Larry's just when he popped in, I get a highlight when he shows up, so I know his comments need to be read. You can subscribe and go to my YouTube page. In fact, I wanted to show that really quick because it's really hard to find. Let me bring that page up. Just a little education on these. It took me a while. It's this little join button right here in the middle of the page. You click join, and it tells you the different options. There's 3 options, but any one of them will make it so that I read your comments. There's just a little bit of perk difference in the others. So if you want to make sure your comments read, sign up for that. All right, let's see here. Cougar Track says, I believe in the next Big 12 contract that football and basketball will be separate entities. I think if Brett Yormark has anything to do with it, it will be. Do you guys agree with that?
I definitely think he's going to work towards it, and I think that that's a great way for them to try and bridge the gap a little bit,
right?
In a way that I don't think either the Big Ten or SEC would even want to bother with. So there's really no competition to them.
Exactly.
Like, if they want to do that and they have a plan to do it, then I tend to think they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Moen, are you back? I don't know. It's like he went on speakerphone or something. Devil Frog says Texas still drives a wedge in the Big 12. Had Notre Dame joined the Big during the late 80s, I'm assuming he's saying it would have done the same thing. It's quite possible.
He's probably right.
Yeah.
That's been their MO ever since they left the Southwest.
Right. Mr. Monkey says Notre Dame to Big 10 or not, Texas spoils all partnerships they're involved in. I think everybody knows buyer beware with Texas. Oklahoma is sort of in that too. Don, everybody's piling on right now. Texas will be a pain in the ass no matter where they go. We Big 12 fans are happy almost to be done with a CCC with them. What's that? What's that acronym?
Don't know.
All right. Well, I'm not going to try to diagnose it. It could be something really bad, so I'm not going to say it. Amac says, amen, Don. So he agrees with Don's statement right here. Sergeant Pickles in the house, UW representing. Can't stay, guys, but just wanted to pop in and say hello. Happy 4th of July to everyone. Go Dogs. Thank you, Pickles. I appreciate it. All you guys that are watching my show, I'm a nobody, and you guys are joining with me, and I think it's because it's part of the conversation. You guys are all involved, and I hope you feel valued because I really do. You guys are a great part of my day. Earl Carr, who's a new member, says, no problem, brother, and go Cougs. I really appreciate it, Earl. Take me a while to get down there, but I got to you, man. Larry's back. Well, at least his comment says, Sergeant Pickles, nice to see you. It's always nice when you guys say hi to each other. I want to make let me really quick editorialize really quick. So a few days ago, there was a show that I'm not going to say names or anything like that, but I would really recommend if you guys are watching people and they don't treat you with respect, they don't listen to you, they at least give you the opportunity to express an idea without derision. If you are watching somebody that is ripping on fellow journalists and people that actually do this for a living and their livelihood, and you're disparaging them, I would really recommend maybe not giving that person money. Your time, obviously that's up to you, but in my opinion, time's worth more than the money. But if you're a subscriber and you're doing these other things to somebody that is attacking friends of mine, I'm saying that right now, it is not okay. And I would just tell you, it doesn't matter how much of a used car salesman somebody is. If you go in the room and they don't want to talk to you, they just want to hear themselves talk, man, that's on you. AMAC says UConn isn't exactly close to West Virginia. Is that right? Wait a second. 520 miles? Is it really? Have you ever done that drive, Immaculate?
I've driven to UConn up into Connecticut once.
520 miles. I
Well,
didn't realize it was that far.
They're gonna fly, so
Fair enough.
it's not
But
that
but
big of a
but
deal.
but that's still an hour and a half long flight, right?
Sure, but it's
Okay.
better than, like,
Yeah.
Texas Tech.
geez.
And I don't think UConn is like what West Virginia would say that's this is the big one we'll be happy about. I think
Right.
I think it's just the idea that, hey, they're looking up here. That's great.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, in a general sense, like if they're looking at UConn, well then, hey, are we looking at Pitt? Are we looking at Louisville? Are we looking at Virginia Tech? Are
Right.
we looking at, Boston College, stuff like that? If there's a footprint up there of other schools, then I think that's good for West Virginia.
I agree. And I want that for him. I really do. Mr. Monkey says, Bomber, I watched the BYU countdown to the Big 12 celebration. If you guys haven't seen that, just look it up on Twitter or on YouTube. BYU put so much money into this party because we're super excited to be in the Big 12, and we want to be part of this team of 14 right now, but really 12 schools. We're not better than anybody. Anybody who says they are, ignore them. Turn them off. BYU is just another school. We just want to be another player, and you guys are all equal partners to us. And I would encourage you to look it up because you can see the joy. It's not fake. Everything that you're seeing coming out of Provo right now is genuine, and the people you meet they'll treat you great.
If I could say this about you guys, though,
go ahead.
Compared to the other three schools, I would say that the hills that the four schools have had to climb in order to get to this point, they're not even comparable. Big 12 has been, BYU has been climbing a much taller hill than the others, and they've been doing it for quite a bit longer.
50 years is when it started.
And it's been a lot of power and forces pushed against you guys, whereas I would even say at one point in time Houston was a darling, but they got left behind.
Yeah.
Cincinnati was jumping around all over the place, but they were still getting things done, and they didn't really have a lot of force against them. It's just, it's a city university with not much room for expansion. But BYU has actually had, I don't want to go too much into it. You know it all, but like basically politics and
it's pretty
even
rough,
deeper.
actually.
So.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you, Immaculate. I love hearing that. Thanks. And it's nice to know that we're appreciated. In fact, the reason I started this show, well, there's a few reasons, but the biggest one is disenfranchised fans that they're not really loud and obnoxious. They're not going to get picked up in other circles because they're just not all about themselves. And that's what I wanted this to be. The people that are on this show and that come to the show and compliment the show, it's not about me at all. It's just about everybody coming together and having a sort of like a forum in Rome. I went to Italy this last summer, and we were standing in the forum, and I looked down on it from above, and I looked down there and I said, this was for 1,000 years the place on the earth you wanted to be. And just to be a part of that, team is really all BYU's ever wanted. And so if you guys run into trouble with BYU fans, let me know, and I will call them out by name if I need to. The second part of this, Monkey, just so you know, BYU paid for that thing in Times Square. They did a countdown in Times Square. The whole world saw it. You don't even know who BYU are, and they were doing this countdown, and it was a pretty big deal. So, yeah, I think that's really cool. Craig says, Craig, thanks thanks for joining the show. Luke Fickle style doesn't fit the big. See, I thought he was great at Cincinnati. I honestly doesn't sound to me, just at first blush, you guys talking about it, I cannot see a run and shoot or any of those sort of high flying offenses working in Wisconsin.
I don't understand that, because Wisconsin, the only real issue they've had is getting the quarterback in there. And if you
Right.
got Luke Fickle there, I don't think you're going to have a problem pulling quarterbacks. They've had great running backs. They've had
Right.
good receivers. They have the offensive line. So anytime you have, you can count on there being a great offensive line there, skill players are going to look at that. And these aren't the days when skill players were, few and far between.
Right.
If anything, now skill players are the dime a dozen, and linemen are the ones that are really fought
Right.
over.
It is,
So
yeah.
I think that Luke knew exactly what he was doing when he went to Wisconsin. And as an Iowa fan, I'm growling over here. Like, this is going to cause so many Iowa fans to be mad about our coaching situation.
Well, let's talk about Iowa really quick.
Oh,
Now, I'm going to
Lord.
do a tour of all these conference teams. I can't wait to start talking about some of these schools. But Iowa, to me, is an interesting. What is going on there? What are you guys going to get a coach that isn't mired in all this nutsiness?
Ferentz is like an institution to that place. He is, and this is how Iowa works. It's the Hayden Fry effect. They don't want to jump around from coach to coach to coach. They're not like, we need to get up to 10 wins. We need this. They want a nice, consistent program so that when they do go out and recruit these players and their family, they know what's going to be there and it's going to stay there. So it's no small thing when they actually start talking about getting rid of a coach. It's a very big deal.
Right.
And I don't think there would be any talk about it, no matter what the record is, except for the fact of nepotism and his son and how poorly performing his offense has been. And
Right.
the way it looks is like he's only still there because of his last name. And
Yeah,
that's a
bad.
problem. So this is at that point now where once you're getting rid of the AD that, basically best buds with him,
Right.
and you're bringing in someone brand new, Ferentz is on the hot seat, like no bones about it. And to have at Wisconsin, Luke Fickle, and he's an offensive genius. He was at Ohio State as the offensive coordinator. For people to think that it doesn't match in the Big Ten, he dominated the Big Ten.
Fair.
So I don't understand why all of a sudden now at Wisconsin it doesn't work. You just got to get the right people. And in an NIL era, transfer portal era, if they can do it at Colorado, they can do it at Wisconsin.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. That's how BYU's scaled up so quickly this offseason is through the transfer portal. Larry, if you can hear us, wave your hand. All right, good. On my interface, it tells me your mic. Oh, there it is. Now you're on. Can you say anything? Larry, say something. Okay, he doesn't want to say anything. I was going to tell you your mic said it wasn't connected. Now it says your mic is connected. Now it says it's not connected. And he's disconnected. All right. Anyway, let's see here. These comments, you guys are fantastic. Earl says, oh, no, sorry. No, we went past that. Sorry, I got lost. AMAC, speaking of Wisconsin, says this was Wisconsin built for modern offense. That will take a while. I think Immaculate just answered that. Two Master says BYU sleeper choice for conference champ. There, I said it. Yeah, lol. Hey, I had them at 10-2 on one thing I did. We'll have to see. Hey, you know what? I'm ready for anything, unfortunately. Let's see. Craig Kerr says the 4 new schools will struggle for a while, but that's okay. They'll become excellent in the field in due time. The Big 12, top to bottom, people, is the most has the most competition in the entire league. It is the most competitive league, and by far, when the season's over, it'll be right behind the SEC again for that competition level. Doesn't mean that's good. I'm not saying that's great for the conference, but I am saying that it's very competitive. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be vying for that top spot. Immaculate, you want to say anything about that?
I think actually we did touch upon that. I do think some of them are going to find it a bigger jump than they realized.
Right.
and I would actually go so far as to say 3 of the 4. But BYU is built different. These guys, some of these guys, they're older.
Yes, that's
Uh,
absolutely true.
I don't need to talk to you about that on your show. Your listeners probably all.
No, go ahead. We
Very-
have a bunch of people. No,
But
no. There's a lot of people
BYU
that are from Big
with
12.
the missions and everything, some of their guys tend to be a little bit older,
Right.
just sometimes bigger, and it's just like a guy that's another 2 years older and whatnot. Whereas some of these other teams, they lose guys before they even graduate. So
Right.
I think that BYU, and didn't you guys just get a quarterback? Like, didn't you get a good transfer?
Oh, we got Keaton Slovis came in
Yeah,
from Pitt.
like,
Yeah.
I think that BYU could come in there, and that's the one to watch, in my opinion.
We will surprise. I'm just going to say that. I know some stuff about the team. I went and met them last week, and I learned a few things. So I wouldn't bet against. I would say seven games is almost in the bag. So everything above that would be all competition. We're talking about games like Oklahoma playing in Provo in November. That'll be a huge game. Oklahoma State is the last game of the year, and it's in Oklahoma. So TCU is in Dallas, and that's going to be rough. But I think we'll be competitive in most games. The game everybody's looking forward to, all the players. I don't know if you would have guessed this, but every one of the players wants Texas bad, like extremely bad. I don't know why. We've only lost to Texas once. We're 4-1 against Texas. Taysom Hill beat him by himself one year. I don't understand that, but
BYU players want it.
Yeah,
I would probably say it's that taste you're only going to get once. It's a 1 year.
Yeah, but you get it once. That's why.
You get the one shot.
Right.
Like, you got one shot to blow them out of the water or whatever. So
Well, we'll see.
If I was there, that's the one I'd want too. Just because you only got one shot at them.
If I could go to one game this year, it would be that one or the Oklahoma. I think the Oklahoma game at home is going to be fantastic. But Craig says the Big has 3 schools and 11 dwarfs. And Devil Frog says he agrees. I don't really want to get into that tonight. Hey there, Two Master Monkey says, and on both counts, Devil Frog says, and Don in Kansas says, I really like the 4 new Big 12 universities. I'm a KU K-State fan first, but I'm pulling for the 4 new members to win as they aren't playing to win when they aren't playing my teams. That's what I've missed about a conference, is not having a conference the last 12 years. I love hating Utah, but back in the Mountain West and mostly the WAC days when we weren't playing Utah, I was cheering for them. I wanted that last game of the year to be 11, 0 teams. I wanted that game to say who goes to the Big Bowl every year. So, yeah, I love cheering for others. I'm going to cheer for every Big 12 school this year until they play me. Let's see here. Devil Frog says Ion or CW linear. We don't know any more information on that, Devil, except to say they are in the room in the stage is what Greg says. They're on the stage. Whether they can close it or not, I don't know. Craig says no way on an Apple 3-year deal. What do you think about that, Immaculate? Could they be renting the Pac-12?
I think that actually
could that happen?
A 3-year deal is better for them than a long term because they don't know how it's going to go. You look at MLS, hasn't gone well. You look at some of the things that they've done that have not done well.
Right.
And if it doesn't do well and you're tied to it for a long amount of time.
Right.
And also, if you don't know if some schools are going to leave, you don't really want to be tied to it long term. And then all of a sudden it gets backfilled with Mountain West schools. Nothing personal against them, but that's not what they're paying for.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
no, I agree with you. Yeah. I think it's actually feasible.
Yeah,
when I tweeted that out last week, I actually said I thought it was very feasible.
I actually think that would probably be their preference at this point if they're going to do anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. Immaculate, you're saying it's not hard to build that offense anymore. We just spoke about that. We're talking about Wisconsin.
Yeah,
we can skip through these. Sorry, I'm going slow. I'm trying to.
No, you're good. No, you're good. It's just they tagged me, so I saw my name pop
right. And that's why I keep telling them if they want their comments to me, I don't mind doing this, but I'm going to jump around. I might miss some. People care about their comments, and I value them, but I can't read them all. That's another reply you had, Devil Frog. Let me see if I can get somebody. Let's see. Who is Steve Moser calling? Who's he talking to? Steve Moser, who are you mad at? I don't really have a show that gets people mad at each other. I'm curious.
He was probably talking about me, or maybe he was talking about. I think he was actually talking about Moen with Kansas.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
But he might have been talking about me.
I love this, Devil Frog, and this is a fact. BYU is going to eat up their record in the 7:30, 8:30 window is something like. I'm gonna butcher it. It's like an amazing record. When they have night games in Provo, they're lights out. Absolutely good. Hey, Moen, you're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Storms are rolling through here.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, you were connected and not connected. So, I think Steve Moser wants to take exception with you talking about Kansas and their brand and all that stuff. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Look, Kansas is a great basketball brand, but nothing against Kansas and basketball. But basketball doesn't move the needle in terms of finances for contracts. If it did, the Big 12 would be the highest paid conference in college athletics.
Right.
Football moves the needle. And BYU has the biggest football brand in the Big 12 conference right now.
That's gonna get people hot. I love it.
Yep.
Devil Frog says BYU is best positioned for exposure, and I expect them to be the first of the 4 new members to have success in the Big 12. How soon? It's hard to say. Yeah, nobody can really put a number to that, but I think it's going to be quicker than you might expect. All right, this caller's dumb and boring, so I'm out. Have a good holiday, everyone. We made Steve upset. Steve, come back. I don't want to make you mad.
He could have argued the point, but I mean,
he could have. He's not a member, right? So I'm getting the texts that were like a half hour ago. So he's probably arguing against the Sun because I didn't make it down to him. If you're watching this on recording, Steve, just know that I'd love to engage with you. Dude, let's do this again and let's have a conversation. I'm sorry you couldn't get to your comment, but I'm only doing super chats and just picking and choosing the others right now. Let's see. Craig Kirsch, man, I love this conversation between people. Devil Frog and Craig Kirsch are going back and forth. Let's see if I can get somebody new. Larry back says, Clint Moses, hey. Where's Clint Moses at? There he is. So Civil War, he's talking about the Oregon State game. And he's saying $3.5 million for the Civil War and the rivalry. Yeah, it's big. I don't think anybody here disagrees. Do you guys disagree with that at all?
No, it's a big rivalry. But I don't think that the rival viewership is indicative of a team's viewership throughout the season.
That's true.
If we did that, Michigan and Ohio State would obviously be the biggest draw in every game throughout the season.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of it has to do with where the teams are at that year. I mean, Oregon State put together a really good team last year.
Yes, they did. Well, we'll have to see. They got a quarterback. Ugalele is in there, so maybe that'll be something this year. This is the year. If the Pac-12 is going to break out and get back to the CFP, it's going to be this year.
We'll see.
Yeah, if they can do that. I don't know if that's even possible. Connor Johnson. Connor, I'm so glad you're here. I know you always come in late on my shows, but I'm really glad to see you. I'm glad to have you here on my show. And if you have comments, I will certainly try to get to them. He's an Oregon State guy. I respect his opinion. He said, I vetted and cleared Jennifer Lawrence as his girlfriend. Well, that's good for you, Connor. I'm glad to hear that. It's a good investigative work. Connor says ESPN's clearinghouse to buy Apple. Pac leads the way. So that is the rumor, guys. That's where this all started.
Is that the right way or is that backwards?
He said it backwards.
Okay.
It's Apple to buy ESPN, and then because of that, the Pac-12 would be best positioned. That's the rumor.
I mean, if that happens, that would change a lot, possibly. We'll see.
That would certainly be something. I don't think that Disney's ready to give up that ESPN juggernaut just yet, though.
Now, isn't ESPN making money? They're not losing money. They made like $4 billion last year.
Yeah, no, ESPN, I believe, is the most amount you can get paid by a cable company for being on the package goes to ESPN.
Right.
I think it's something like $9 for every subscriber is for ESPN, basically.
Right.
So it's one of the profitable branches of Disney, but they're cutting talent just because they're cutting costs to make up for the losses in other departments.
But this is what ESPN always does, though. And you can go back and see them have guys that were well known and big name there. And whenever those guys get big, almost too big for their britches, so to speak, they ask for the big contracts, and then ESPN cuts them off. They send them to go elsewhere, and because ESPN feels like their product is the main show.
Right. It's not the personalities,
not the talent, and that they can make another talent. So whenever any of these guys start to make more, they always do this. It's just, it seems like it's a little bit more this time, and that's probably due to some bad decisions of theirs. But this is their MO. This is what ESPN does. That's why they call it the mothership. Like,
right. Of course.
That matters, not the individuals, and individuals go out the door quite often.
Nobody's bigger than the team. Right? The old saying. You want to add anything to that, Moen?
Well, I mean, they're never going to get rid of Herb Street. That's, I mean,
right.
Herb Street will always stay there. There's going to be a couple sacred cows that they'll just never get away from. But ESPN's laying off because Disney wants to boost its profits. And Disney's losing money and the new Indiana Jones movie came out this weekend, and it was a $400 million movie, and it made $60 million opening weekend. So there's obviously other divisions in ESPN that are not being as frugal with their dollars as ESPN is. So
the last 3 years since Marvel Endgame, Avengers Endgame came out, the last 3 years for Disney has been a disaster.
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it. They've picked the wrong people. They've become this political entity now. They're doing, a lot of stuff that I don't want to get into because that's not this show, but it causes a lot of conflict, and people are starting to tune them out. And that's hard.
Trust me, I'm a Disney stockholder. So.
Oh, are you? Well, I'm a Disney watcher, so there you go. You have my support.
I want that stock to go up. So
it will go back up again. It's just might need some reorganization. ASU and Colorado never getting into the big. That's just a statement from Craig.
Yep.
If you want to talk about that.
I respect Craig, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, and one of those cases. And I'm not guaranteeing those schools to get in. I just think that they have a better chance than most people give them.
The whole land bridge you guys were talking about, building schools along the way to get to Nebraska, which is right now the farthest west it comes. That's sort of the thinking behind that, right? You'd go Colorado, Arizona State, and then LA. Is that right?
I mean, to a degree, it matters. Like Colorado has so much history there. A Colorado-Nebraska rivalry game. We're talking about rivalries. Well, if Prime does stay there and Rule stays in Nebraska and they build these two teams up, that could be a rivalry. I would put those two in the same division for that reason. As far as it being a bridge, they're looked at individually. Like travel times to Colorado for all your sports. It's a lot easier than going over the mountains and going all the way out there. It's always mountain time, so it's only 1 hour over instead of 2 hours when you're losing time coming back. And just because of that history and the status, and like I said, I think there's going to be some other schools coming that Colorado also would have history with. It's just a unique pack pick for the Big Ten for multiple reasons, which, if I could put it up on a graphic and show everyone, it'd probably be more easily as a whole. But when I look at that as a whole, I see Colorado as a very strong, unique pick that basically marks every box that the Big Ten would require.
Okay. All right. Cougar Phil, join the show. Cougar, I believe you're new. Welcome to the show. You're welcome to put your comments in here. I try to get to them. If you want to guarantee I'll read your comment, just subscribe. There's 3 levels of subscription. I'm not going to go through that again, but go to the website. The YouTube page. There's a join button right in the middle of the page, and it'll show you your options. But thank you for being here, and I'm happy for Houston, just as much as I'm happy for BYU. I can't wait to actually get down to Houston and watch another conference game down there. I need to clear this up, Connor. I am not talking about Greg Swaim, so just get that out of your head. This is not who I was talking about when I was talking about integrity and treating people nice. Let's see. I already did that, Connor. mean face for some reason. Go Cougs. Yeah, there is a difference between Cougars and Cougs. I figured that out this weekend too. So Houston's the Cougs. Devil asked Cougar Phil, I like that UH's first Big 12 game will be a loss to TCU in Houston. Yeah, I think we would all agree with that. What is it, on UTV in Oklahoma? Oh, that's horrible. Why would you
Yeah,
put that in our chat? Maybe you got the
thoughts
wrong
and
show.
prayers.
I'm that's horrible. I don't know what even to say. Caught me off guard there. It's certainly not funny. Yeah, sorry guys. I need to reset really quick. That is not funny. I'm sort of taken aback by the question. So
Yeah, it seems odd to put it out there on a college football show.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Here I am
Just-
trying to get everybody's comments and that sort
He
of
was trolling you a little bit.
evidently.
Yeah.
AMAX says Big 12 would love Louisville and Pitt for West Virginia. They're not available now. I hope for the future. Yeah, I think that's what they want.
Those
right?
are the two best fits
right.
in the Big 12 and the ACC right now. And getting Cincinnati in there, you've got all those rivalries. That'll be
Right.
fantastic when that happens.
Agreed.
Yep.
Yeah, I hope it happens through
Yeah.
the natural progression.
I actually responded to him in the chat there, so you'll see that for my response.
Okay. Connor, wish all BYU fans were like that. Lol. You're talking about me? I don't know. All Cougar fans I know are nice, but yeah, I'm sure there's bad ones out there. Craig Kirsch says AMAC, Louisville, and Pitt will be one day in the Big 12. We just did that. Immaculate replied, my bet is on them being available eventually, probably sooner than most realize. Yeah, I think that 26 time frame. I used to say 30, 31, but I'm agreeing a little bit with what Moen said earlier, that date is sort of looming now, and it's not that far away.
It goes back
Right.
to Herb Street. He said 2024. Watch
Right.
2024. And that's why I point out, remember when we say the 3-year deal going to 2026 or whatever, you got to figure out 2026 and 2024. So
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
More teams you get in, the more money your conference makes. So it definitely, and you also get the benefit, more teams you have,
Right.
the bigger cut of the pie you take. So it's definitely more beneficial to consolidate moving forward.
it just bear in mind that everyone has their ideas on what 2026 is going to be, but we have
Right.
no information
That's
on how
true.
that's going to go.
Yep.
Like that's why I can come up with something going in the opposite direction, and it's just as feasible because we have no information.
Yeah.
So it's basically whoever has the power for
Right.
setting that up is going to determine that. So
In the moment. Right. Just really quick, do you guys see like Apple or Amazon bidding for the CFP? Or another party, another online entity of some sort?
At some point, yeah, I see Amazon definitely would want
A piece of it at
game.
least? Okay.
a game or two. I do see that all the conferences would probably work together to get the most money possible.
Right.
And like Amazon offered the Big Ten more money than CBS did for that 3:30 slot, but the Big Ten chose to go with CBS
Yeah.
for the better exposure.
Yep.
So it wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility to see Amazon at least getting a piece of it, that first deal.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well,
Go ahead.
I tend to think I can only go with the way I see things going, which might be a lot different than others. But when I put that together, there's no more than 12 games on any week in my playoff projection.
Right.
And if you were to take the main channels for Fox and ESPN, 5 channels showing 2 games a day in the playoff times or in conference tournament time, for 10, and then 1 for CBS and NBC, that's 12. That would cover the entire supply. So I could see just as easily as scenarios coming where they actually get shut out of the postseason and they'll pick up regular season for some other conferences.
Interesting. I think they're gonna try. Whether they get it or
Oh,
not might be like the Big Ten thing where they got frozen out. I would definitely take CBS over Amazon. Not because I don't like Amazon. I actually like Amazon. I think they do a good job and they're getting better every day. But CBS, I mean, talk about blue bloods, right? So
Yeah.
It's just
You-
that's
you-
the
you know,
high end stuff. Everyone wants that
yeah,
huge visibility, and if
right.
putting that on those outlets,
Well, and over the air is still the
it's just-
predominant, right?
yeah, it's just not very good visibility for those games. I
Yeah.
think that they're gonna have to prove themselves in the regular season first.
Right. Greg Medina says, great show, guys. I would echo that. You guys have been fantastic guests. This has been awesome because I know a lot of people have been talking on Twitter, aren't able to get their ideas out. It's really hard to do that on Twitter. So I just threw this show together, and I really appreciate you guys being here a lot. I hope you guys know I really do.
Oh, great to be here.
Craig says, when the ACC implodes, the Big 12 will have their pick of 8 to 10 teams. We've been talking about that all night. I don't think they're going to have their pick of 8 to 10. Let's split them up. How many teams they have right now? 14, counting Notre Dame, or do they have 16?
I think it's 15 with Notre Dame,
With
right?
Notre Dame, and
Yeah.
who the ones are always spoken for? Clemson, North Carolina.
Clemson, Florida State, Miami,
That's 4.
North Carolina,
Yeah. Virginia.
and then you get into
Virginia
Virginia
Tech.
Tech.
That's 7.
I say Georgia Tech.
Georgia
Me
Tech, and then
personally,
and
I
Notre
think
Dame
Georgia
is
Tech's a
9.
candidate. Yeah.
So the ones you're losing are the Duke. You're losing Boston College. You're losing Wake Forest. Those are the
Wake
teams
Forest.
that
Mhm.
might not get picked, right? They could end up like Washington State. And I'm going to say this, unfortunately, I want everybody in, but numbers are ugly.
I'll say
I think the Big 12 would take Duke, though.
Big
Oh,
Big
Duke.
12
Oh, yes, Duke
contract
for
says
sure.
they're
Yeah.
the same value. So
Well, the current contract does. The one they just signed has the pro rata in it for P5s. I don't think it's about the value. We started the show speaking about thinning out your product, and I think there's a concern. Although Immaculate, you have the counter argument, which is every league needs people at the bottom as much as the top,
Mhm.
and that helps even out sort of records and everything else. So you could be right. I agree that Moen, you said Duke. Yes, I think Duke would go, but I'm not sure that they would go to the Big 12. But I for certain think the Big 12 would want Duke. You got basketball in Louisville and Pitt, and maybe Virginia Tech. Yeah, there's a lot of teams there. Go ahead.
I have another idea about how I think things are going, but it's way too soon to go into that. So using that as the scenario. Yeah, I think, well, number one, Wake Forest, you're not bringing them in to lose. You better be ready to play if you're going to bring in Wake Forest. I think you bring them in to compete.
Right.
Boston College, I think they could be something someday in football. They have been in the past. They do play competitive. They just tend to not get much credit when they do.
Right.
I think you bring them in. I don't see why not. And if ESPN is going to pay you to do it equally, you can work it into your geographic divisions,
right,
of the future. I think so. I mean, Duke definitely for football. Oh well, so you beat them, but you're going to have them for basketball. And if you're really trying to have a separate basketball contract, that's a no-brainer to throw on there.
Yeah, very fair.
So yeah, I don't see any ACC school as not being on the table. If SEC wants to split up the entire ACC so that they don't have some major legal headache on their hands with that 36 extension, it's just simpler. Just put them out there and go from 3 conferences to 2 conferences that you're paying, and probably, if anything else, it's a wash.
Yeah, I think it would revitalize the marketplace myself.
And it's the only way that it happens for 2026.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
Otherwise, it's a big legal fiasco.
Greg Medina says, would the Big Ten ever screw Texas and Texas A&M and give Houston a look? I think that's a fair question. You might not like the answer, though. What do you think, Moen?
No. If there's going to be any Texas team signed, it'd probably be Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and TCU.
Yeah,
I think those would be the only 4 that would be in consideration. And it's nothing against Houston. It's just the Big Ten generally doesn't like schools that are just city-based schools like Pitt. It's one of the reasons that Pitt tried to get in back in the 60s, and they got outvoted in favor of Michigan State.
You think TCU would get a look?
I think TCU would get a look.
That's interesting. I
Just
caught that
because
as
they would
well.
want to, if the thing
I've
is, you would be
never
wanting to
thought
get a
of them that
foothold
way,
in
but-
Texas. It'd be your best available. I
Yeah.
think your chief target would be Texas A&M, because Texas A&M is a school you might be able to lure away from the SEC now that Texas is there.
Yes, they could. Absolutely. Yeah.
The SEC does have an exit fee now, though, in the contract that they put in there for the new contract with Texas and Oklahoma. So
That's fine, but Texas A&M boosters would pay it in a second if they thought
sure.
it got them closer to a net. They're going to
But-
pay off Jimbo Fisher at the end of the year. So
I get the emotional feeling of like, screw Texas, but I think that that's more damaging than it is helpful if you go and leave the SEC to join the Big Ten, and you leave Texas in there and Oklahoma in there, and I think they're
don't
just going to have
disagree,
to.
but
Yeah.
Texas A&M, that's a special kind of hate they've got. with
The Big
Texas.
Ten would take them if they wanted to. We'll say
Yeah.
that. How about
Oh,
that?
absolutely.
We
The
could
Big
agree
Ten
that the
would
Big
love
Ten
to
would
have
take them
support
if they
Texas.
wanted to, but that's
Yeah.
it.
So,
Yeah.
Larry dropped out, but he did leave a comment. And the reason I'm reading it ahead of all the others that are over there is because Larry's a subscriber. So you want me to read your stuff when we're this busy? Do a super chat or please subscribe. Subscribing's so easy. It's much cheaper. You do it once. It's for the month, and every show you're on, I always read your stuff. Anyway, I don't know why I try to sell that so hard. It's common sense to me. Larry says, with all the cord cutting, promoting movies has changed. Hardly saw any promotion for Indiana Jones. I would agree with that. People are going a la carte viewing, and many avenues of exposure are changing things. ESPN has already said they're doing a la carte. So that brings up the bigger question is, it's now that we're sort of bifurcating all these channels, and Fox came out and said they weren't going to do just a dedicated online component. ESPN is saying that's the future. We already know where Apple and Amazon are. Where do these conferences look now for continuity?
Well, I think Fox is approaching it differently by selling to networks that do have that. For instance, NBC and Peacock.
Right.
They're buying from Fox. They're not buying from the Big Ten. Am I right on that, Moen?
No, I think actually they are. I think Fox is producing it, a la the Big Ten Network's
Ten
actual
Network,
production
yeah.
facilities.
Yep.
So they're actually paying Fox for the production, but I believe the money for the Big Ten actually comes through the NBC Universal portion of that contract. But then NBC is also paying Fox, who technically owns the Big Ten Network.
Yeah.
Which is something that you're going to see similar with Apple and the Pac if that deal goes through. The Pac-12 network is basically going to be producing their content to provide Apple TV.
Which is not a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's going to bring the number down. That's why, I think this Pac deal, it's going to be so incentive based. It's just going to be put out there to where they can say our deal's worth more than the Big 12, and then just hope people don't look at the fine print.
Well, I guess we'll find out. One way or another, something has to be done eventually. Let's see. AMAC says, amen, Monkey. That would be the nightmare scenario. I'm sorry. Monkey says, let me bring that up. AMAC, I hope the Big 12 championship is 2 non-OU-UT schools again, plus no UT championship. I would love that. I think everybody, for college, all of the Big 12, if you're a fan, you want that to be the case. What I want is BYU versus TCU. That's Baylor would be the other one. Actually, Texas Tech would be fun. Actually, I don't know that there's a game I don't want to go see. I would love BYU in the championship, though, for sure.
I've got Kansas State.
Yeah, they're going to be good.
Kansas State
Yeah, they're
is going to be the. I think they're going to pull it out in the Big 12 again.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Yeah, I think that's fair analysis. Keenan Hadnot, I'm not sure I've seen you before. Keenan, welcome to the show. U of H, let's go Cougs. I'm getting a lot of Houston Cougars in here. This is cool. Let's see. Two Master, let's say his. Not since Mangio has KU football moved the needle. Last year they had a good year, right?
Well, they paid off Charlie Weiss quite a bit.
Well, that was a long time ago, though. Greg Medina, Houston Cougar here, and I agree that BYU is the biggest brand. Oh, thank you. I'm not going to argue with that. You're saying it, not me. Dude, you said Kansas is a brand in Kansas, not nationally in basketball. That's what he's mad about. Me too. That's
I'm
insane.
sorry, Kansas is not a bigger brand nationally than UCLA or Michigan State or North Carolina to me.
Right.
I think that they're
You can
thinking
choose to
that you're
disagree
saying
with
that just about basketball, that Kansas isn't a blue blood in basketball. But what you're saying is as an overall realignment brand.
As a brand.
Yeah.
Right. As a brand.
So I think that there's a
I'm
little
not saying
mix up
Kansas
between
is
the
terrible in
sides.
basketball. I mean, Kansas is a great basketball
Right.
team. I just don't think that they move the needle enough to be significant in realignment.
That has been the question.
I don't
For
bring
sure.
in Kansas to the Big Ten until we're rounding out our geographic divisions, and that's why I consider Kansas, because they've passed
Kansas
the
will be in the corn division with Iowa and Nebraska.
That's where I'm looking. I'm looking at Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and Missouri.
Man, I love it. Bringing Missouri back even. Nice.
I think that's the one school that SEC will let go without an exit fee. Like, sure,
Maybe.
take them.
Go ahead.
Take
Yeah.
them.
AMAC says, I agree. BYU is the biggest brand. See, I love this. I'm a BYU guy, but they're doing the speaking for me. They're not even BYU fans. Glad to have them and their 3 new members. I just wish TU and OU were already gone. I think everybody agrees with that. They want one last shot at them, though. Everybody, the hateful eight, all want their last shots at those teams. I love BYU's finally made P5 conference. I think the same thing with Houston. Now I hope they play like I hope Houston plays like one. ESPN is a cash cow for Disney. I can't imagine Disney getting rid of them. So let's be clear. That rumor was originally posited in 2021. And I think it was on John Wilner's article, or John Canzano put an article out that said they had heard that Apple wanted to buy ESPN. And then it resurfaced last month in June. I want to think at the beginning of the month. And then since then, a story has developed that's been picked up by actual people that are in the business that I even know personally that has filled in those bits and pieces. It's not complete yet. A lot of sticking points. Are they okay with Washington, Oregon getting a lion's share? Hey, Stanford isn't. I can tell you that right now. Stanford's not ready to give that money up. And neither's Utah. Arizona State has been mad the whole time. So who knows if they can get it together. Let's see here. Disney won't get rid of them. However, there is such a thing as a hostile takeover. Do those still happen? I'm thinking
I
Wall
don't think
Street.
that can happen with Disney the way they're
I didn't think so either.
structured.
Yeah. Larry's back, and he's the subscriber, so I got him in here with all. We already did that. I apologize.
You jumped forward on that one.
Thank you. Well, I'm trying to catch up to
I
these
got you.
ones here at the end. Let's see. Opie, good to see you, Opie. Long time no see. Just getting here and heard the most likely 3-year contract for the Pack, and I just do not understand why a 3-year contract. You're kicking the can down the road like what, 1 year? Opie, you're right. That's what everybody's been saying. Nobody disagrees with you.
It's a -2. It takes 2 years to get out of a conference. So
Right.
Yeah.
3-year deal is basically buying you 1 year.
1 year. It's 27 months technically.
Yeah.
So that gets you to March next year.
And that's
And then-
when Herb Street said to look for is 2024.
So I agree with you, though. I want it over just as much as you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's actually cheering for this right now. If you waited 3 years, years, you may not get a full share in the Big 12. If you waited 3 years, what?
I disagree with that. I think the Big 12 would give any of those schools
Right now.
a full share.
Yeah, I agree.
Right now or 3 years from now.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I do think there's limited seats, though, because they really want those Eastern teams. So it's not going to just be bring the whole conference in.
Right. No,
Yeah.
they only want a few.
Yeah. AMAC, unfortunately, I have to wait another year. Houston is at Tech this year. Well, you come to BYU next year. Georgia Tech, no way are they going to the SEC or the Big. I mean, never. They aren't worth but $30 million.
I disagree with that vehemently.
Tell us why. I know why, actually, but tell everybody else why.
The Atlanta market is number 7, I believe, nationally. It's projected to be top 5 within the next 15 years. That's a lot of households. And if Rutgers proved anything, you don't have to be a winning team in that market to present value for that conference. Adding Atlanta to the Big Ten would be a big deal in terms of the Big Ten network, and getting a local carriage fee from a cable provider It's also a big deal. You get a recruiting foothold in Georgia. Georgia Tech's won a national championship in the last 30 years.
Yes, that's true.
They've fallen on some hard times, but I mean, if you want to go back and look at tradition in football, John Heisman coached at Georgia Tech. Bobby Dodd coached at Georgia Tech. I mean,
aren't they and Notre Dame kind of rivals a little bit? Don't
they
have
have a rivalry with Notre Dame. They're
Yeah.
a huge research university, especially in engineering.
Mhm.
You could put, and I push for this rivalry they can have with Purdue. Purdue are the Boilermakers, and they're the Ramblin' Wreck. They can have the train wreck trophy. It'd be perfect. So I understand why people look at Georgia Tech and only see it as Georgia Tech, but I see it as the Big Ten buying into Georgia.
I have them as an alternate to Miami. If Miami gets in with my scenario, not saying that this is the only thing. You
Right.
could have them in all kinds of different scenarios, because I do
Sure.
think that they're I think that they're actually on the radar. Otherwise, they would have been part of the Magnificent Seven talks. But the only way they're getting into my conference, if I'm commissioners, if they agree to get rid of that offense and allow an incoming coach to actually install their own offense.
Well,
It's-
and that's the thing. Moving
so
to the Big
limiting.
Ten, you're going to have a lot more resources. So
Yeah. Well, hiring a coach because he'll do your offense instead of the other way around is just
right.
so backwards.
And that seems a little backwards.
It's so backwards. I'd be like, you got to get rid of that, and then you can join.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is pretty messed up, I think. And but stuff like that happens in college football, though. You'll have those sort of weird situations pop up in these universities because they want to do something,
It's tradition.
Yeah.
Well, look at Michigan.
Right.
Michigan got Lloyd Carr out the door and hired Rich Rodriguez, and that didn't
Yeah.
work out too well. I loved it personally. I would have given Rich Rodriguez a lifetime
Yeah, I bet you
contract
did.
at Michigan.
What happened with him, man? He just went downhill so quickly.
Yeah, it was
He was not
overwhelming.
prepared for the Big Ten.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that he came in high flying, and they had an offense, and they looked like they were ready, set to go. I just couldn't understand what happened.
There's a lot more to that than what you see. Like when you go from, where was he at? He was at what, West Virginia?
He was
West
at West
Virginia.
Virginia before. Rich Rod was at West Virginia.
To go from West Virginia to Michigan, you can't even really put it into words of like just how much more he's going to have to deal with and how overwhelming it probably was for him.
Well,
Right.
the whole deal with that was that was when Herb Street came out and said Les Miles was going to be the next coach before the SEC title game
Oh,
that
wow.
LSU
Okay.
was in. And then Les Miles had to have a press conference and said he was out. And the way it's been told to me was that Les Miles had agreed to coach at Michigan, but once it got leaked by somebody at Michigan, he said no.
Oh,
So Michigan had to scramble to try and find their next coach, and that's why
Right.
they picked up Rodriguez, who was coming off a very good season at West Virginia. Had they
He
not
did,
lost
yeah.
the backyard brawl, they'd
Yeah.
have been in the national championship game against Ohio State that year.
yeah, he had a good team.
What's up,
That's true.
guys? How you doing?
Wild
What's
Ute
What's
is in the
happening, Will Duke?
house.
Hey, what's up? What's up? Just wanted to
So-
pop in and say hey.
So we did this as a pop-up show. It started off just I was giving people time to vent, right? Because the last 2 days on Twitter has been madness since
Oh,
June
yeah.
30th and July 1st went. Last you and I spoke, we talked about doing a couple things, but I was just seeing almost pain on Twitter. People just not communicating, hard to get their ideas out. So I just threw a pop-up show together. These guys happen
Yeah, with
to
the rate
join.
limitation and everything going on. Yeah.
with the what? Oh yeah, you know
with
about
the rate
Twitter.
limit. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to talk
Reading
about
other
Twitter.
people's tweets.
Anyway, so that's what this started as, and then
Yeah.
as we've gone through it, and you could watch it on replay when we're done, but it's been we've been going through all the different scenarios about realignment. We've talked about particular teams and how they're doing in their conferences. What happens when the ACC and Pac-12, if they do blow up, what happens? So we've talked about all those things. You're new into this call tonight. Is there anything on your mind that you've had that's been eating at you all day the last 2 days?
No, it's just the research project that Bomber and I put together.
Now I
You guys
mentioned
are-
that to these guys a little bit, but I didn't give them
Oh
details.
yeah, guys, we're gonna do a Holy Rival short here tomorrow. We're gonna film it. Totally nerded out. Did a bunch of research project on a lot of data, and it's really interesting to see where teams probably shake out when it comes down to it. Like some Pac-12 teams, expansion candidates. It's pretty dang revealing, actually. And we're gonna try to pitch it from a more of a president's viewpoint and stuff, not an athletic director, but if you're the university president, yeah, how to look at that data. So that's what's on my mind still. So
Hey,
excited to
you know
bring it up.
that one slide that showed Oregon? Can you
Yeah.
pop that up really quick?
Yeah.
Put
See
it
if I
up
can
because
get it.
I want these two guys to see that one slide. I mentioned it a little bit, and I know Moen's into that. He knows the Big Ten numbers.
No, hey Bomber,
inside and out,
you
so-
have the deck. Can you pull that up?
No, I forgot. Yeah, I can. You guys talk. I'll find it.
So so you guys are talking about Les Miles and how he wrecked KU football?
That came
we
up-
were going further back than that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Or back when he was with LSU?
Yeah, when he wrecked Michigan football.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that is further back. I remember when Rich Rod was with the Michigan and the Utes went into the big house and beat down the Wolverines.
That's actually what we were talking about was Rich Rod.
Yeah.
Oh,
And,
freaking
it-
Rich
and then
Rod.
brought up Les Miles.
You
All right.
guys want to check the slide out though, because so like this slide that Bomber's going to show you.
All right, let's do
It's,
this real quick. Here we go.
It's really laying out the research spending over a 10-year period,
Let's see.
according to
Okay.
the National Science Foundation.
Let me make us out of the picture. So go ahead and explain this. 'Cause
Yeah,
this
so
is
a
revealing.
this is a sneak peek, you guys. This is going to be a short tomorrow, part of the short. But check this out. So this is the 10-year breakdown of research spending in the PAC.
And those are billions, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah. So
Those
yeah,
are
these
billions.
yeah. So if you're looking at it, you can say Washington almost did about 15 billion in
Yeah.
research over 10 years. That's what
Yeah.
that's telling you. Look at Oregon. Look at freaking
Yeah.
Oregon, guys. Like Moan, look at Oregon.
Well, like and I was telling him earlier, Oregon is kind of saddled with legislator that will not allow them to have a medical school. Oregon State is the designated engineering school. So Oregon really can't do anything until they get those handcuffs off from the legislature.
Yeah.
They're never going to be able to get that research budget up close to any of those people. The only thing that's saving them is Phil Knight and Nike doing
Right.
all their research through the university.
That's
Fox.
right.
Well, no doubt. But when Oregon State and Wazoo are doing more research than you, and that's been like, okay,
Yeah.
so everything's been about research. Oregon is AAU, but my goodness, if you compare this to a normal Big Ten team, it's a joke. Like it really
Yeah,
is.
Oregon is. I've crunched the numbers. I don't know if we're using the same source, but Oregon's about a third of what Nebraska does
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
research, and Nebraska isn't AAU. Part of that's because their medical school is located in Omaha and it's not on the Lincoln campus. That's the only reason Nebraska's not AAU.
Yeah. It's wild stuff, but I think it's pretty revealing. I think it's going to really factor into realignment decisions. And I know people hate talking about this stuff. They hate it, but like this, if you're a university president, this matters.
It
a
matters.
lot.
Yeah.
It really
It's
does.
interesting that you have Colorado so low in this because of where they actually stand, like on a year-to-year basis right now, is much higher than that. So kind of
Yeah,
looks like
so
they're really coming up.
really ASU, Utah, and CU are kind of like in that same tier in the rankings too. Like in any given year and stuff, it was pretty dang close. Arizona spends a little bit more. And then obviously, I was surprised that Washington outdid Stanford. That was a big
I'm not
surprise to me.
surprised with that.
But
No.
yeah, there's a little bit more where this came from with the Big 12 breakdown and stuff that we'll get into the short. Guys, I'm sorry I can't talk for longer. I got to drop here in a second, but
That's
Well, the
okay. That's a nice tease.
yeah, nice tease. But hey, you guys, nice talking with you, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Here, we can
All
tease
right.
you here real quick. Someone was saying they think Utah's actually going to end up in the Big Ten earlier. Hey, you have yourself a great day.
We'll see you later. Should I kick him off right now?
He's like, wait, what?
What?
Okay, we'll see you
guys.
later. Bye.
See ya.
That was awesome. Thank you for doing that. That made my day. Thank you. Mr. Monkey, I love this comment, and I hope everybody takes this to heart because I really mean it. Don't know if you get to this comment. I'm glad I did, but I love the respectful and positive nature of this group. Kudos to you and Wild Ute. We're trying to build something here, right? We can be rivals without being dickheads. Let's just say it straight up. And I think everybody should be the same way. And I don't know, there's not many that are. You know, Greg does a good job at it. There's some others that are trying, but it's hard to stay out of the contention stuff. You know, people want to fight for some reason. I
Right.
don't get that.
Rivalry should start and end on the field.
Yes. Yes. And in fact, BYU and Utah together, this is a fact. I don't know the numbers, but BYU and Utah together, when they're both pushing to get something done, stuff happens, right? They're extremely strong together. But when the thing with the Pac-12 and independence, the last 12, 13 years has been horrible because you've had these two groups that used to, go to dinner together. And now you got one group who honestly treated the other group like garbage, and the other group felt like they were always on top anyway. And so what's this kid telling me what to do? And it's been yucky. So I can't wait for this year to kick off. And I really appreciate Monkey's comment. Do you guys want to add anything to that as we start to wrap this up?
That's actually, for me, kind of the norm, because being from originally Iowa, the Iowa State rivalry is a fairly friendly one.
Right.
And I see the same thing here in Arizona, between Arizona State and Arizona. I mean, there's some people who get all riled up about it, but overall, it's more of a friendly rivalry. So I think that's best. Get riled up for the game. You can even talk trash, talk shit, do whatever you got to do, have fun with it. But when people get very personal about it, it just kind of comes off as odd, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Right. It's terrible when people take things too far. Like when they poisoned that tree in Auburn, and it's just
that was crap. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, and Ohio State fans, I'll say it right now, Ohio State fans are some of the worst fans.
Right.
We've got some bad ones, and you try and talk, but it's just you try and reason with drunk people. It's you can't do that. So
that's the warning to all new Big Ten members: is just don't wear all your colors when you go to watch a game at Ohio State for the first time.
That's a word of warning.
Just go in street clothes. You'll be fine.
We haven't talked about SMU much, probably for a reason, but AMAC says SMU is irrelevant in their own city. I don't think anybody disagrees. There are Texas high school teams that draw bigger crowds. SMU's in a tough spot, guys.
Yeah, they're building a $250 million stadium.
They are. It's true. They are.
Yeah.
Because
that's the future. As long as you have a stadium that looks good on TV, you got a shot.
Yeah, Oakley, thank you. Yeah, tomorrow we're going to put that short together. I recommend everybody come back to the channel. We'll have, it's probably going to be about 10 or 15 minutes. The presentation that it puts together, I'll say it again, he is amazing. And it's all in context. It's not just numbers cherry-picked to suit a purpose. Like, you already know what the end game is, so you use data to get there. This is actually just letting the data speak for itself, and then everybody else can make their own decisions on it. And it's really good. And I'm just going to bring this graph up again. How easy is that to look at? It's pleasing to the eye, easy to understand. Anyway, that's all the stuff he does, and he is great at it. Let's see, 2 more comments down here. But do a graph on research dollars spent on sweet unis. Okay, Oregon wins that. We know that, Monkey. And the last one from Craig says, Fox doesn't care about research money. They care about viewers. Fox won't pay for Stanford or Cal. Final comments about that, or for that matter, anything else?
I don't disagree, but Fox doesn't ultimately make the decision. They have a voice in it, but the presidents of the university still have a voice in it.
Right.
If the presidents didn't, Oregon and Washington would be joining the Big Ten in 2024.
Yeah, it's a negotiation. Fox wants Oregon. The Big Ten, at least some of the schools, likely do not. At some point in time in the negotiation, the Big Ten may cave on Oregon to get something else as part of the negotiation. But I would not expect those voices that are anti-Oregon to ever change that until that last moment of negotiation. Then they might make a deal on it. But yeah, they're going to be very loudly against it to make Fox give in order to get Oregon. But I do expect Oregon to eventually make it, because Fox is going to want that brand in the Big Ten.
Okay, but no realignment before
2026.
No, now it's 2026.
Oh,
it's not Notre Dame. You missed your call.
No future big expansion.
There you go.
Notre Dame.
That's what I meant.
Can I tease Moen on what I told you about?
Please,
I'm not going to go into it, but Moen, I made I've kind of come up with a little bit of a potential theory that actually lands Notre Dame somewhere else other than Big Ten. And
Okay.
you
What
might
is it?
bring that out. Well, it actually is them staying in the ACC, but it's an ACC that is much different than what anyone would ever expect of it. And it would actually explain why ESPN would be willing to move so many of those schools out of the ACC and mostly into the SEC and Big 12. But need a lot more to come out before throwing that out there, because it's going to seem crazy. I'll say the one thing I'm watching is that the suit up in Brown. I'm
Right.
sure you're aware. The lawsuit.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, because multiple other Ivy League schools jumped in to defend, even though the lawsuit's not at them. Like it's
I'm not sure Moen's heard that. We talked about that the other night. Immaculate. You want to
well,
dress
I
that
know
out a little bit?
Greg brought it up first, and that's what really cued
Right.
me in on it. It's called Cho et al., and I'm saying that wrong. It's CHOH, then ET, then AL. Moen probably understands that a little bit better than I do. But it's kind of a class action lawsuit against Brown for discriminatory practices for athletic scholarships. The way it works in the Ivy Leagues is they don't give full scholarships. They do it on a case-by-case basis of, like, if someone has a need for some money, they'll help out. But basically, it's so that legacy students can also play sports there. So it's that's why they don't, like Dartmouth went 10-2 and could have went into the FCS championship tournament in football,
Right.
but they didn't go because they don't send their legacies to go play against anyone else. They keep it all in-house. And what this is threatening to do is make them change this entire tradition. And even if they win this case against Brown, they could basically raise this case at every single school. And once you get one of those to win, it is a precedent that all the others can then use, like student groups and whatnot at those particular schools. So they've got to look at this situation right now and say, if we're going to be forced out of this tradition and we're going to have to end up paying for all these scholarships, do we want to have to beg more of our graduates for that money, or do we want to actually create a couple sports that pay the bills like everyone else? And if that becomes their decision, they have a very limited window right now. And if they don't make the right choice in this limited window, the opportunity cost for making the wrong choice is huge. So I'm watching that to see whenever news comes out on that investigation. If it goes in a certain direction, that could be huge. We'll just leave it at that.
You have any questions
Yeah,
about
we'll have
that,
to see
Moen?
how everybody gets ahead of everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Right. Okay.
But to have multiple other schools in that conference all jump in on that with their own defense teams, like full defense teams, because all these schools have huge law firm,
Right.
have law schools, so they can pull in some of the best. And like there's like 4 or 5 of them now that have law teams helping and aiding in it. So they all have a big, huge vested interest in seeing this go down. But if they feel like there's any crack at it at all, they might have to switch gears, switch directions, and play the PR game and say, yeah, we're going to go to full athletic scholarships without being told to do so. You know what I mean? If it's a court order, you look bad. You just look bad. So
Right.
I think if they're looking at it and it does not look good, they'll jump before we ever get an actual judgment. That would be my take on that. You seem to have a little bit more of a mind towards the legalities, so I was kind of curious what you thought of that.
Well, definitely. I think all the conferences are going to get together and get in front of this before it's better for them
Right.
to get in front of it and get a settlement. It's like I've mentioned with the revenue sharing with players.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to happen.
Yes.
The choice is you can have the courts decide it, and it might be worse, or you guys can get together. It might be worse for either party, or you guys can get together and come up with a compromise. And I think ultimately that's what you're going to see happen. And with that Ivy League case as well, I think you're probably going to see all the members of the conference would get together and say, hey, this is going to happen. Let's get with the players. And the players say, hey, usually more often than not, most legal cases don't even go before a court. It's, a very small amount. They almost always end up getting cut off in settlements or going to a summary judgment of some sort.
Yeah, if this one goes to court and they have a judgment against them, it looks bad.
Right.
So I don't think they're going to let it go that far. And so it's really going to be interesting to see what their solution is. And because we're in such a narrow window, if they decide to turn football into an actual moneymaker to cover all of these scholarships, they got a limited window to jump up here because they have to jump up. And this is the Ivy League. They don't do things small. If they're going to do it, they're going to go big. And sorry to the legacies, you're probably not going to be playing football here unless you get better. We got all the other sports, and so it would be interesting to see if they would make the jump to something like the ACC, because they do that, then they get Power 5 votes. Now they're not just sitting off to the side hoping that the Power 5 makes rules that they like. They actually get a word in on it, and that's a whole different advertising base. It's a whole different marketing base. Now, if you're an ESPN and you're trying to bring in advertisers, it's a whole different group of companies that would advertise to those schools that wouldn't advertise to like the big college brands now. So if you're really trying to...
The only caveat I would put on that is I don't see the Ivy League reducing their academic standards to lure a recruit.
Well, they've already done that, though, brother. They've already changed their academic standards for admission.
Well, sure, they've come down a little bit, but they're not going to go to.
There's no testing
level like
involved.
They're not going to go to an academic like a Clemson level of academics.
No. I would say I would use Andrew Luck as my example.
Right.
At Stanford.
That's the guy that could have gone anywhere. He chose to go there. Now, if you're an up and coming guy that can do that, you could go to, say, Harvard, play big time football there, make it to the league. You only have to stay there for like 1 or 2 contracts and get out. And now you have yourself the entire Harvard graduate network to go with your $100 million and go do whatever you want to do with your life and not have all the problems of long-term football. And that's what Andrew Luck did. I mean, he got out early because he did not want to play that long. For guys who are looking at it from that direction, it's an entirely different opportunity. You don't go there and graduate early. You go there and you graduate. But you also play top-level ball. Maybe you get into the league. Maybe you don't. If you do, you use that inside that graduate network. It's probably not something that a lot of people want to talk about and listen to, but there's a lot of value in that, and that's why I say I point to Andrew Luck. You're looking for people like that. And
right, but I would point that out and say that's the exception, not the rule.
Maybe.
Like, I don't think the number 1 recruit in this class, given the option between Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, BYU, Notre Dame, would put Harvard in that list.
But that's not what they need, because if they clear out most of the big schools from the ACC and all you have left is, say, Duke, a Boston College, a Wake Forest, and maybe a Notre Dame, then you bring in 8 schools. Now you got 12. They're all private. You could bring in a Rice, a Tulane, a Stanford, and you could just have like a private university, maybe with California, just so that Stanford has somebody. But it's just a different concept that they don't have to play at the same level. They'd still be at a higher level than a lot of your G's. But how do you create value in the ACC after you take all of that out of it? You know what I'm saying? Like, if they wanted to try to keep it.
Yeah, I just don't see them create. I think eventually what we're going to see with the ACC is whoever doesn't get picked is going to merge with the Big East schools, Connecticut, and you might be right. The Ivy League might move schools up, but it's going to be a glorified G5, more or less. I think, like I said earlier, we're going towards 3 conferences.
Charles says National Big Ivy League.
I mean, it's just it's pure speculation. There's
Right.
nothing to it right now. It's
No,
all
I mean,
entirely
it's an
dependent,
interesting
but,
theory.
it's dependent upon that lawsuit right now and how that goes. And
Isn't
break-
isn't the bigger question though in the age event, and this is Stanford's problem, right? They're not going to be bringing in many transfers on the transfer portal, and the standards that they have to have, they're not going to lower them for sports. So the NIL thing is out the window too. In this modern age, how does a team like Stanford stay?
but they've already. But here's the thing: is like this is how we think of them, and it's right. That's how I've thought of them. But they have literally already changed their admission standards. But here's the thing: is like they lower their standards, but they're still just as picky because they have all the people trying to get in. So
Right.
lowering your standards doesn't matter if the students you have to select from for your limited number of spots is all still just as high. But
Right.
what it does is allows you to get picky with whom you want to allow in that maybe beforehand wouldn't have passed your admission standards. So they've
Right.
lowered it already to give them the possibility. So
I mean, I'm not saying it's not.
technically they could. Whether they do or not,
Right.
I don't know, but they could.
Okay.
And if they turn that into the thing that pays for all the other scholarships, well, then they can still do their legacy kids who come
Right.
in and play all the other sports with a paid scholarship,
Right.
and it's paid for. Like just now, they were the legacies. Their parents are paying for them to go there, and then they also get to play this sport or that sport, and
Right.
it's all bragging rights within the graduate network because these guys, once they leave these elite schools, like they get each other jobs, they get each other promotions, and it's a very real thing. So getting involved with that as a big time player, there's a lot of value there. Like if they could potentially be there. And like I said, the future that I see is a 6-team national champion tournament. And if they're in the ACC, they get in one of those spots. So they would have a route.
Mr. Monkey says, guys, I got to go. Great show, Bomber, Immaculate, Moan Vision, and BTM community. He's named our show. That's what he's done.
Did you see James's question there?
No. Yes, I was getting to that. That was next.
Okay.
Yeah, this G5 question. And I know we're going a little bit longer, but this is so interesting to me. So we talked realignment and spent all the time, rightfully, I kind of think so, on the A5 teams. I hate the P thing. What do these subdivisions do? And I really think they are subdivisions at this point. Do they consolidate into 2 big conferences and then start their own thing? Maybe have their champion or 2 come up?
Like I put out, when you do the math, if my thing of 25 is right, there are about 131 schools right now. So if you were to go with 5 conferences, you don't have enough space. If you go to 6 conferences, you have 150 total. So that makes room for anything coming up, like the 8 schools of the Ivy and maybe some others. So I think that there's going to be a ton of realignment in the G area, and we're already seeing it.
Right, we are.
We're seeing a lot, and their moves
Yeah.
are bigger.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a massive amount of movement in the Gs. I think you're going to see movement from like Mountain West to the American. You're going to see some, maybe some FBS ones come up and join the MAC. Like, I would love to see some of the Dakotas do that.
I think the Dakotas need to
the
quit
Montanas.
playing, punching baby league and come actually play some big football.
Well, if as I'm thinking, those other 3G conferences also have a direct route into the playoff here in the future, that becomes a much more viable thing then for those schools, because those schools are used to having a direct route into the FCS championship. And so that's big for them on campus and
Right.
the excitement of that. They play for that every year. So if they were
But
to
they're not
jump
getting
up,
any money for it though.
no, but
Money's the thing right now.
but we're talking about schools that are in very small areas.
Right, that's true.
What are they even going to do with that money? I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
I mean,
don't
they
know.
could do something with it, but it's not vital to them right now. Like
Right, that's true.
for their culture. But if they had a route, say through the MAC to actually get up to the big playoff, I think that they would take it. I think that then they would take that shot. So we'll see. But I do think that the G5s will also consolidate in the same manner. They will consolidate to 3 conferences.
I think the best 4 or 5 teams in the Mountain West should already be in the AAC. So I don't know why that hasn't happened yet. Moen, what do you think?
I think you're going to see consolidation, but I also think you're going to see some competitive alliances forming. You're going to see the Mountain West Conference champion maybe playing against the American Conference champion.
Right, I could see that as well.
Get that extra game in there to improve the strength of schedule to try and get up into the playoffs.
I think that very easily could happen unless, like I said, those few teams that are really carrying that whole league decide to go to the AAC, make some more money, and are playing, I think, a bigger collective brand of football, I think, if they did that. But it might be too much to ask for. Charles says he's been thinking about this for a long time. Tulane becomes the OU of that league. Is Tulane going into the Ivy League? Is that what he was saying?
Oh, if I think he's talking about the concept that we were just talking about. If Tulane was to join that, they would, because of all the success they're having right now, they would go in as a big time.
Okay. Hello, Opie says, hell of a think tank we got going here. Love it. That's it. That's what we got together tonight for, is to be the smartest guys in the room. No, that's not true.
And Charles has, like, I talk with Charles a bit in comments on some other videos, and he has been in this realm as well. So
absolutely. It's just like Opie has. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I'm just saying none of us talking right now thinks we're better than anybody else. That's all I was saying. Let's see here. A few more comments. Charles says there are 16 FBS private colleges. Give me an example of one of those. Like North Dakota State, is that what we're talking about?
But he's saying FBS, that's the top level. That's not the FCS.
Oh, okay.
So that'd be like anywhere from Notre Dame all
the way down BYU, Notre Dame, TCU. Okay, Baylor. Yep. I got you. Yeah, I thought a long time ago that I thought all the private schools should get together. That would be a really good league, actually. But and let's just call this our last one. We're almost 3 hours, guys. You guys have been amazing. Everybody's gotten a chance to vent. I hope I recognized you on the side. Vernon Sheldon, you came in at the end there. Thanks for that comment. I really appreciate you being here. Everybody subscribe. Like these guys. I'm going to drop this comment in just a second. Like them if you see them on social media. Subscribe to this channel. And then if you want to be involved in the conversation, for sure, subscribe. And I'll always get your comments out. That's why I'm finishing with Larry, who was my first subscriber. Oh, no, my great uncle was. But anyway, he says all the students becoming employees is another huge wrench. Moen, I think, mentioned that a minute ago. Conventional college football is coming to an end. And that's where we start getting in a little dicey with monopolies. And anyway,
it's impossible, but that does not happen until we have autonomous consolidation of the P5 to a P3 or whatever. So that might be coming, or they might have another type of solution for it, but that won't happen until this all gets figured out.
Very good.
Right. And I don't believe in them becoming the actual school employees. I believe they'll become conference employees.
Yeah.
Really?
To get around Title IX.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of state schools, that would make them state employees, which means they pay into the state retirement system.
Oh, wow. That's
ultimately what you're going to see is these conferences taking a slice of the media revenue, and that's going to go towards the student athletes. They'll get their own slice. Right now, the Big Ten, when USC, UCLA joins, that 17 shares of media revenue, 16 teams, 1 for the conference. That'll go up to 18. You'll get 16 for the team, 1 for the conference, and 1 for the student athletes.
Wow. Yeah, that would be extraordinary. It obviously would change the game. And I know, Moen, you've spoken about that for a long time now. Do we put a percentage on the next 5 years that happening?
100%.
Is it? Is that close? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then everybody else is
Again, they want to get out in
speed up.
front of it. They want to get out in
Right.
front of it as much as possible.
Charles gave all those private schools. Might as well name them: Notre Dame, USC, Miami, Stanford. I'm telling you, this would be a good. I've thought about this before. Northwestern, Vanderbilt, Duke, Wake, SMU, Tulane, Syracuse, TCU, Baylor, Liberty, and BYU. I'm telling you, that would be a great conference.
It's intriguing to just think on the idea of, could this be enticing to Vandy and Northwestern?
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
It's true.
well, I don't know. Maybe at some point in time, but their cost to get out would be pretty big.
It would. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Love you being on my show. Thank you so much. Everybody else in the comments and every if you participated or not, just watched. Thank you so much. Please subscribe. And this next week we'll be doing this show that Ute just came on and gave a preview of it. I'll bring up that one slide. This is just one of a few slides he's built that are really going to break down where the money is going in the Pac-12 and in comparison to some other expansion candidates. So I hope you can tune in for that. It'll be a 15-minute or so short, and leave comments and suggestions. We use those. Thanks again, guys. You guys have a great night. And if I don't talk to you, have a great 4th and be safe with your families.
You guys do likewise.
All right. We'll see you later.
Thanks for
Good
having
night,
me, man.
everybody. Peace.